Young Hiroshi hugs his mother tightly, happily declaring that he wants to become a superhero when he grows up. His parents explain that to become someone who helps those in need, he will have to work really hard just like the person in the poem they are reading. Staring up at the bright sky through the trees, the young boy resolves to do exactly that for his parents. He imagines himself as a heroic adventurer setting out to turn an exiled land into a beautiful paradise. Years later, adult Ijima Hiroshi stands stunned outside Hoshikawa Industries after being abruptly asked to retire despite 10 years of hard work. Shocked by the sudden news, the 29-year-old confronts Hoshikawa and demands to know why he has to leave. Reclining in his chair, Hoshikawa dismissively blames the termination on company restructuring due to a financial bind. Sweating and desperate, Hiroshi argues that the decision is too sudden considering he gave up his leave and worked massive amounts of overtime. Hoshikawa coldly interrupts him, stating that complaining will not change a thing. The boss leans forward aggressively, accusing Hiroshi of paying back the debt he owes with spite. Clenching his fist, Hiroshi earnestly expresses his gratitude to Hoshikawa for being like a father and taking him in as a student so he could support his little sister. Hoshikawa acknowledges that Hiroshi's late father used to boast about his studious son whose knowledge rivaled managers with real work experience. Pausing to think, Hoshikawa maliciously suggests a new path for Hiroshi to make full use of that knowledge. Laughing mockingly, the boss tells Hiroshi he is screwed anyway and jokingly suggests he should just reincarnate as someone else. Gripping his own arm in defeated resignation, Hiroshi falls completely silent. Bowing deeply, he sincerely thanks Hoshikawa for having him for the past 10 years. Hoshikawa carelessly tells him to leave his retirement request on the desk because he has somewhere else to be. Leaving the building with his bag, Hiroshi walks dejectedly down the city street as his phone dings. Reading a message from his sister thanking him for taking care of her now that she landed a job, he fondly remembers their father's old words. Reaching into his bag at the crosswalk, he reflects on his father's teaching that kindness must continue to spread and every favor must be gratefully repaid. Pulling out his cherished collection of Miyazawa Kenji poems, he reaffirms his desire to become that exact type of strong and kind person. Suddenly, someone yells for him to watch out just as he holds the book that acts as the compass guiding his life. A massive truck hurtles straight toward a young boy frozen in the middle of the road. Accepting his fate without holding a grudge against anyone, Hiroshi throws himself forward to do everything that he can. Bleeding on the ground, his last thoughts are of relief as bystanders confirm the young kid didn't get hurt. Thrown through the air by the deadly impact, he drops his book while realizing that he truly means it when he says he will be unbeaten by the rain and wind. As his life fades, the text of the poem merges with game-like stats granting him incredible magic resistance and vitality. A flurry of magical skill cards materializes around him, granting him the powers of a sturdy castle and a nightingale's hands of healing. Drifting through a white void, he embraces the idea of being called useless by all while shedding tears in times of drought and a cold summer. He accepts being neither praised nor a bother as his superhuman abilities continue to stack up. Waking up in a brand new body, he realizes he actually managed to become someone just like the person in the poem. Reincarnated into another world, he introduces himself as the 13-year-old hero Roswell instead of Ijima Hiroshi. Flocks of birds fly over a grand estate in Roswell, a sprawling territory located within the kingdom of Asgard. Striding down the lavish halls past bowing maids, he explains that he was born as the eldest son of the Roswell family which serves as the guardian shield of the royal knights. Stepping towards a large window, he notes that despite his life of luxury, he isn't wholly happy with being the next lord of this land. His younger twin brother, Marisun Roswell, approaches from behind and asks what he is looking at. Staring out the window together, Hiro tells his brother that he noticed something concerning about the town below. Observing the bustling streets, Marisun points out that the town is lively because of their upcoming birthday, but Hiro remains sharply focused on the carriages. Pointing at the merchants from other territories, Hiro explains that all their returning carriages are completely unloaded. Turning to his shocked brother, Hiro warns that this stoppage in the circulation of goods proves their people will soon be unable to make a proper living. Marisun points out to Hiro that procuring daily necessities is becoming increasingly difficult due to shortages and inflation, a concern shared even by the head maid. Hiro reflects that the harvest period now lasts only half as long because of a natural disaster that struck the year they were born. Looking nervous, Mari-san deduces that this shortened harvest period is the reason they are only able to yield half as much food. Sweating and forcing a smile, Hiro awkwardly admits that his brother's assumption is not entirely accurate. Hiro warns that things continuing this way will inevitably lead to problems, prompting Mari-san to scratch his head and complain that it is all too complicated to understand. With a determined glare, Hiro declares his burning desire to save their people from heavy taxes and asserts that as the eldest son he is the only one capable of doing so. Staring out the window at the estate, Hiro notes that he will soon receive a divination from the gods bestowing him with governance or military powers. Swallowing his anxiety, he reassures himself that the extensive knowledge retained from his previous life will certainly prove useful. Gazing upon the grand cathedral as its heavy bells chime, he acknowledges that this impending divination ceremony marks his true first step. Breaking into a jog, Mari-san urges his brother to hurry toward the church so they do not miss receiving their divine revelations. The grand holy hall of the divine church stands before them in majestic silence, serving as the sacred divination area. Approaching the stern Oliver Roswell, the boy's father and head of the family, Hiro quickly apologizes for their tardiness after getting caught up in conversation. As the high priest asks to commence the ceremony, Oliver sternly reminds his eldest son to show more awareness since the entire family's future rests on his shoulders. Stepping forward, the high priest explains that divinations are sacred revelations granted to humans coming of age and that they will manifest physically as texts. Spreading out examples, he details that the heir may be bestowed with 4 possible revelations consisting of 2 governance and 2 military command abilities. Moving the ceremony forward, the high priest instructs the young heir to open his scriptures and begin his solemn prayer. A blinding and radiant glow violently erupts from the open pages of the scripture in Hiro's outstretched hands. As the light intensifies, a massive and ethereal winged figure magically materializes directly behind the glowing boy. Bathing in the divine radiance, Hiro closes his eyes and fully embraces the surging power overtaking his small body. An eerie, profound silence descends upon the grand cathedral as the supernatural light finally fades away. Staring in shock at the sheer number of scattered revelation cards littering the floor, the high priest nervously suggests they begin reading them immediately. Examining the first few cards in awe, the high priest notes that 2 relate to governance and will permanently assure the abundance of their future harvests. His celebration halts as he picks up a bizarrely glitched and distorted card labeled GACH, causing him to stutter in absolute confusion. Leaning in with sparkling eyes, an excited Hiro eagerly asks if this mysterious GACH text could be some kind of brand new military revelation. Admitting he has never encountered such a thing, the high priest strokes his beard and decides to use his own revelation ability to inspect the strange card. Focusing his divine magic, the priest opens his mystical all-seeing eye with an intense and serious glare. The glitched card suddenly snaps with violent, rejecting energy, forcing the priest to cry out in sudden pain. Groaning and dripping with sweat, the startled priest collapses backward as the dark card flutters harmlessly to the stone floor. Staring in pure horror at the fallen card, the priest mutters that such an ominous text actually rejected the eye of God itself. Turning his trembling gaze toward Lord Roswell, the high priest warns that they might have a truly grave situation on their hands concerning the young heir. He dramatically reveals that the eldest son has somehow caught the eye of a demon, leaving a nearby Mari-san utterly shocked. A wave of panic ripples through the adults as they question what this demonic revelation will do to their noble family standing with the kingdom. The high priest grimly confirms that harboring a demon-marked heir will inevitably cause their entire family to be eradicated by the crown. Desperation immediately sets in as someone pleads with the high priest to find any other way to resolve this catastrophic crisis. Pondering the dire request, the high priest shifts his gaze back toward the confused Hiro as he considers a much darker alternative. Leaning in to whisper secretly to Oliver, the priest suggests the incredibly cruel choice of exiling Hiro to a provincial territory and promoting the next heir instead. Stepping forward with a sudden and sinister smirk, Mari-san interrupts the hushed conversation to suggest that Hiro was perhaps never the eldest son in the first place. Mari-san smugly fans out his own newly acquired revelation cards, proudly displaying incredibly rare abilities like the protection of the dragon and the minor god of abundance. After the high priest confirms those were all the texts meant for the eldest, an arrogant Mari-san asks if his father would care to look at just one more. Mari-san confidently displays the fate-weaving sword of victory, leaving everyone stunned that he received a miraculous revelation from the legendary Guardian Sword family. Realizing the massive potential of the revelation, Lord Roswell concludes that true independence from the kingdom is finally within their grasp. Turning his back on Hiro entirely, the ecstatic father embraces Mari-san and proudly praises him as his true eldest son. Stunned by the sudden betrayal, Hiro protests that he is the actual eldest and demands to know what his father is saying. Oliver glares down at the shocked boy with a terrifyingly cold and silent intensity. The ruthless patriarch explains that simply exiling Hiro would besmirch the family name and coldly offers a different suggestion. He proposes leaving a piece of land for Hiro to manage as a mere foster child since the boy always wanted to be a ruler. Outraged at being demoted to a foster child, Hiro furiously demands an explanation from his smug brother. Unfazed by the anger, Mari-san slides away and casually tells Hiro to take the hint already. Turning his back with a dismissive clink of his cape, Oliver bluntly states that he does not wish to sully the church with blood. Staring at his father's retreating back, a horrified Hiro realizes that the man is dead serious about killing him if he resists. Oliver cruelly reasons that they should give Hiro a piece of land too dangerous for their own vassals now that he is merely a foster child. Pausing to finalize his malicious decree, the patriarch makes his ultimate decision. With a dramatic gesture, Oliver officially grants his discarded son the deadly territory known as the Great Demon Forest. Clenching his fists in silent frustration, Hiro steps forward to face his grim new reality. Swallowing his pride, the young boy kneels on the stone floor and humbly accepts the lordship of the Great Demon Forest. Hiro bows his head in quiet submission while his father glares down at him with undisguised contempt. Sweating nervously, the high priest stammers out that the Roswell family's divination ceremony is officially concluded. Oliver instantly shifts his attention back to Mari-san to prepare a grand celebration for his new heir while carelessly telling Hiro to hurry off to his new territory. Happily following his father away, Mari-san answers the call with a cheerful smile. Pausing for a brief moment, the younger brother admits that he has something left to say since this will likely be the last time they ever see each other. He spitefully reminds Hiro of how everyone always fawned over him just because he was born a few minutes earlier. Revealing his deeply rooted jealousy, Mari-san confesses that he has always completely hated Hiro's stinking guts. Giving a mock salute, the treacherous brother cheerfully tells Hiro not to die in his new territory and bids him a final goodbye. Watching his usurper walk away, Hiro resolutely vows that this will absolutely not be the last time they meet. Gripping his chest with newfound determination, the reincarnated boy declares that his territory management begins now because his life's compass remains exactly the same in this new world. Meanwhile, an unknown figure trembles while recognizing Hiro's distinct habit of nervously gripping his own arm. Sitting behind a grand desk bathed in blinding light, the mysterious man realizes with absolute certainty that the boy is actually Iijima Hiroshi. Walking through the quiet woods, a startled Hiro spots a rabbit and nervously wonders aloud if he is weirdly lost. Hurrying down the dirt path, he worries that at this rate he might just end up exactly like Mari-san predicted. He recalls that his designated territory is a harsh land unsuitable for trade or farming and is dangerously close to the monster-filled Great Demon Forest. Despite the bleak prospects, he confidently resolves to use his abundant past life knowledge and a secret trump card to alleviate the suffering of the local people. Spotting a mysterious figure slumped against a large tree root, he stops in his tracks and hums in confusion. A heavily injured demi-human girl with animal ears leans against the wood while panting heavily in exhaustion and pain. Noting her terrible physical condition, Hiro realizes with alarm that she does not look well at all. Stepping quickly toward her limp body, he urgently asks if she is all right. Kneeling beside the groaning girl, he gently touches her shoulder and asks if she can hear him or move. Supporting her unconscious form, he notes her deep back wound and realizes an amateur cannot treat it out here without a doctor. Laying her down gently on a mat, he frantically rustles through his heavy bag with a loud thud to find anything useful. Pulling out an ornate glass bottle, he confidently declares that this specific item should be able to save her. Popping the cork off the bottle with a quick motion, he carefully brings the rim to the injured girl's lips. Given to him by his grandfather for his birthday, this magical medicine will completely cure absolutely any wound or illness just by drinking it. Serving as his sole asset and ultimate trump card for territory management, just one of these priceless elixirs costs enough for a noble to live a lifetime of luxury. He perfectly remembers the altruistic teachings to go east to nurse a sick child and west to lighten a weary mother's burden. Drawing upon the Hand of Healing and Nightingale revelation cards, he activates recovery magic with maximum effectiveness to save the demi-human. A gentle fluttering light miraculously envelopes the girl's body as the potent magic finally takes hold. Hero patiently watches over the resting girl in the tranquil forest clearing while waiting for the medicine to work. Her breathing steadies as the wound miraculously seals itself completely, leaving Hero amazed by the incredible results. Laughing softly to himself, he humorously accepts that this single healing act just consumed the power of his entire fortune. A sudden realization makes him pause and hum in surprised curiosity. Staring at a skill book now clearly bearing the title of Benevolence, he wonders if the cover always had that specific name written on the front. Shrugging off the minor mystery, he notes that her clothes are in tatters but decides her recovered health is all that truly matters for now. Clenching his fists with comical determination, he playfully declares that now is his perfect chance. The injured girl slowly groans as she opens her eyes and groggily asks where she is. Sitting cross-legged nearby, Hero smiles warmly and gently asks the confused demi-human how she is feeling. Shocked to find her clothing altered, she covers herself defensively and furiously demands to know what he did to her. Flinching back from her anger, Hero innocently explains that he was simply fixing up her torn hood. Her aggressive demeanor shatters into nervous realization as she suddenly remembers that her clothes were indeed torn up. Holding out her fully repaired cloak, Hero gently offers to give it back to her right now. Snatching the fabric with a quick swipe, she stares at him in complete disbelief and asks if he actually saved her life. Standing tall, he formally introduces himself as Hero, the foster child of the noble Roswell family. He calmly explains that he was simply on his way to his assigned territory when he came across her lying on the road with a major injury. Since there were no doctors anywhere nearby, he used his own personal medicine to completely heal her wounds. Narrowing her eyes with deep suspicion, the girl fiercely states that his lies will not fool her. She furiously accuses him of being a slave trader or mountain bandit since humans absolutely love to capture and enslave demi-humans. Pointing accusingly, she argues that a high-ranking Roswell noble who leads the Royal Knights of Asgard would never travel alone without attendants in a dangerous place like this. As she continues arguing that an ordinary traveler would not have medicine capable of healing such a fatal wound, she suddenly spots a metallic clink at his side. Her eyes go wide in shock as she recognizes the official family crest sparkling on the empty elixir bottle hanging from his bag. Seeing her shocked expression, Hero smiles softly and admits that he only had one elixir, so he is truly glad that it actually worked. Still highly suspicious of his intentions, the Beastman stammers out a question, demanding to know why he would waste such a valuable medicine on a complete stranger. Tilting his head in genuine confusion, Hero asks if saving a person who is about to die is really such a strange thing to do. Glancing at the discarded empty bottle, he firmly declares that the monetary value of an elixir is absolutely nothing compared to the priceless value of a living life. Struck by his completely selfless answer, the demi-human girl stares at him with wide and utterly stunned eyes. Breaking into a sudden burst of genuine laughter, she notes that this is the first time she has ever met a noble who could say something so ridiculously cheesy with a straight face. Looking away somewhat awkwardly, Hero admits that his current status as a noble is actually a bit iffy right now. He explains that due to certain circumstances he was demoted to a foster child and banished from his family to serve as the lord of the land up ahead, prompting her to realize they are in very similar situations. Looking down with a melancholic expression, she solemnly confesses that she is also considered the black sheep of her entire race. Leaning in with an inquisitive look, Hero softly repeats the phrase, quietly asking her what she means by being a black sheep. Standing up tall to formally introduce herself, the demi-human proudly declares that her name is Amelia and that she is a warcat. As the nearby bushes suddenly rustle, Amelia explains that it is the strict custom of her race to always repay a favor, especially for something as incredibly valuable as an elixir. Reacting to the hidden threat in the bushes, Amelia immediately steps forward to place herself protectively in front of the startled Hero. Noticing her sudden shift in demeanor, a concerned Hero urgently asks her what the matter is. Amelia grimly warns him that there are enemies nearby, prompting Hero to nervously ask if she means the same people who severely injured her. As a heavy boot loudly stomps onto the grass, Amelia clicks her tongue and clarifies that she is talking about a completely different group of hostiles approaching them right now. Four rough-looking men emerge from the tree-line, sneering that they thought they had lucked out finding a defenseless noble kid alone and expressing annoyance at his unexpected beastman guard. Sweating nervously as he stares at the armed thugs, Hiro realizes these dangerous bandits are specifically targeting him. Glaring fiercely at the approaching bandits, Amelia addresses Hiro directly and declares that she will repay a portion of the massive favor she owes him right here and now. She urgently instructs him to run away as fast as possible while she selflessly draws all of the bandits' attention to herself. Extremely worried for her safety, Hiro desperately asks if she can really take on that many armed men all at once. Narrowing her eyes with grim determination, she honestly admits that she does not think she can actually defeat them all. Clenching her fists tightly, she explains that while warcats are a species specializing in combat, she was always the weakest of them all and probably doesn't stand a chance against these mountain bandits. Explosively kicking off the ground with a loud bang, she fiercely shouts that she can at least buy enough time for her savior to run away safely. Reaching out his hand in sheer panic, Hiro screams for Amelia to stop and desperately begs her not to throw her life away. The crude bandits mockingly yell that she sure talks a lot for a mere kitty as they aggressively prepare to violently strike her down. One of the smug thugs lunges forward with a vicious punch, confidently yelling out that he has her trapped. Her keen feline instincts instantly flare up as her innate danger sense skill rapidly activates to heighten her combat awareness. Moving with incredible agility, she smoothly dodges the incoming fist with a loud whoosh and fiercely yells at the bandit not to underestimate her. Following up her flawless evasion, she flips dramatically through the air and expertly slams her heel down with a devastating, earth-shattering impact. Delivering a crushing upward strike straight to the bandit's jaw, she proudly declares that noble warcats are a tad bit different from average house cats. Unfazed by their comrades' quick defeat, another bandit sneers that her incredible warcat fighting skills will not matter once they surround her since she is completely alone. Instantly activating a powerful skill card labeled Spatial Movement, Amelia multiplies her explosive strength by 4 and vanishes from her original spot. Utilizing her magically enhanced spatial movement, she rapidly ricochets off the surrounding tree trunks with heavy thuds to completely disorient her attackers. Unable to track her blindingly fast movements, one of the frustrated bandits curses loudly and frantically yells at her to just stay still. The frustrated thug's eyes suddenly widen in pure terror as he realizes the deadly demi-human has abruptly completely vanished from his line of sight. Reappearing directly in front of him like a blur, Amelia effortlessly delivers a brutal, bone-crushing flying kick squarely into the startled bandit's face. Blood heavily spurts from his nose as the massive impact savagely launches the cursing man backwards into the dirt. Landing gracefully back on her feet without wasting a single second, the fierce warcat immediately winds up a devastating punch to continue her relentless assault. Driving her fist forward with terrifying, explosive force, she mercilessly buries her knuckles deep into the remaining bandit's gut to swiftly end the intense battle. Reeling back from the devastating feline strike, the injured bandit groans in pain before quickly recovering to excitedly challenge Amelia to another round. Without a moment of hesitation, the fierce warcat mercilessly drives her fist right into the thug's groin with a sickening crunch. Spinning around to face her startled companion, Amelia urgently screams for Hiro to get out of the area as quickly as possible. The exhausted demi-human desperately admits that despite her best efforts, she simply will not be able to take down all of the remaining enemies by herself. Clenching his fists nervously, Hiro interrupts her desperate warning to point out that the enemies she is so worried about are actually already dealt with. Amelia blinks in sheer confusion as she watches the battered bandit collapse motionless into the dirt with a heavy hiss of defeated breath. Examining his glowing hand with intense curiosity, an amazed Hiro cheerfully remarks that Amelia was being way too humble about her incredible strength. Staring at her own trembling hands in total disbelief, the stunned warcat confesses that she feels as though her combat techniques have suddenly become significantly sharper and infinitely stronger than usual. Pondering the bizarre power surge, Hiro curiously asks the bewildered girl if this sudden physical enhancement could simply be a lingering side effect from the magical elixir she drank earlier. Shaking her head to immediately dismiss the boy's logical theory, Amelia firmly clarifies that legendary healing elixirs absolutely do not possess the ability to artificially enhance a warrior's technique mastery. A terrifying new enemy violently wraps a massive arm around Hiro's neck from behind, agreeing that elixirs don't grant strength before maliciously suggesting the boy might possess a rare beast tamer skill instead. As her enhanced danger sense skill violently triggers to warn her of the massive threat, a horrified Amelia frantically screams for Hiro not to move a single muscle. Trapped in the crushing grip of the heavily scarred bandit leader, a terrified Hiro freezes in place as Amelia grimly recognizes just how incredibly dangerous this new ambush truly is. The war cat Amelia stands protectively between Hiro and the massive, hulking figure while whispering that the man is truly dangerous. Hiro looks at the towering man with visible sweat and trepidation while asking him what he meant by his earlier statement. Amelia remains on high alert and admits she could not even sense the man's presence or hear a single sound as he approached. She reflects that despite Warcats possessing the danger sense skill for constant awareness, this man managed to bypass it entirely. As the man lunges forward with a sudden, powerful motion, Amelia shouts that he was not being overconfident but warns her to never get complacent about her own abilities. The man moves with impressive speed and power, proving that even humans can perform such astonishing feats with enough dedicated training. Stepping in closer to the pair, the man leans down and casually asks exactly what it is they want with him. He bluntly states that he is merely here to tie up some loose ends, leaving Hiro and Amelia on edge. With a sudden roar, he shouts for the group of stunned thugs to get off their backs and stop napping on the job. The bandits look up at their leader in disbelief and wonder if he actually came back to save them from the warcat. He tells them to get ready to fight before taunting them about their luck finally running out. The man bows down deeply and apologizes to Hiro and Amelia for all the trouble his rowdy subordinates have caused them. Hiro and Amelia stare at him in utter shock as they try to process his strange and sudden change in demeanor. The man smiles broadly while introducing himself as Smirnov, the very same leader tasked with keeping all these bandits in line. He claims that he prefers to view his group as honorable outlaws instead of common bandits, noting they have an ironclad rule against harming law-abiding folks. A frustrated thug yells about how they are always starving because of that strict rule, but Smirnov ignores the complaint while preparing to make a move. Smirnov lets out a loud battle cry and swings a massive, blunt weapon down toward them, vowing not to let anyone bring shame to the name of heaven. As debris flies everywhere from the impact, Smirnov tells them he has a special proposition and explains that while he would love to compensate them for their trouble, his pockets are currently empty. He gestures with the heavy scroll as he insists that disciplining his rowdy men is his own personal responsibility. Smirnov grins and asks if they would be willing to let the group off the hook with just this simple explanation. Hiro stares at the offered object with intense curiosity and wonders what this mysterious item actually is. Smirnov clarifies that the object is simply his own head, causing the stunned pair to ask if he is serious. The scroll he holds reveals a wanted poster for the Sword Saint, a legendary S-rank criminal with a massive bounty on his head. Hiro and Amelia gasp in disbelief as they realize the bounty on this villainous-looking man is worth significantly more than the price of a rare elixir. Smirnov asks if they might be the ones to collect his head, but his own men panic and beg their boss not to do such a crazy thing. The bandit leader lets out a sharp, dismissive scoff and tells them to shut their loud traps once and for all. With a sudden burst of speed, he lashes out at his own men and sends one of them flying away into the distance. The leader shouts that the Smirnov family has absolutely no place for useless hoodlums who act like common criminals. He sternly orders them to head back to the countryside and find odd jobs to support themselves instead of acting like bandits. The thugs fearfully scramble away as their leader warns them that he never wants to see their pathetic faces again. The man's aura intensifies as he calls for the group to get back there and face him right now. The man continues to stare down his cowering men while Amelia pulls up her danger sense card to track his movements. Hiro shouts in terror for the leader to stop as the situation escalates rapidly. The leader's immense shadow looms over Hiro and Amelia as they realize the true danger of the man standing before them. The leader stands over them as he demands to know why they are just standing there looking confused. He looms over the scene with an imposing and intimidating presence that dwarfs the two travelers. The leader prepares for another massive attack as the air around them begins to tremble from his raw power. Hiro and Amelia cower in fear, realizing that if his next strike actually connects, there will not be a single trace of them left. The man lifts his massive, blunt weapon high above his head and prepares to strike down at the ground with terrifying force. Smirnov yells at Hiro to use his beast tamer skills to calm the situation down before someone gets killed. Hero nervously clarifies that he is not a beast tamer and doesn't have any skills like that at all. Realizing they have no other choice left, Smirnov tightly clenches his heavy weapon in preparation. Smirnov bravely steps forward with a loud clang to deal with the terrifying beast himself. The bandit leader lets out a painful grunt as the massive minotaur forces him back with a booming impact. Sliding backwards across the dirt, Smirnov fiercely struggles to hold his ground against the monster's overwhelming strength. Calling out over his shoulder, Smirnov orders the boy to grab the Missy and run while he creates a distraction. A horrified Hero utterly refuses to run away and leave the man behind to die alone. Smirnov smiles reassuringly and explains that a real man knows when to pull out and when to put his body on the line to save others. Turning to his injured companion, Hero urgently tells Amelia they need to escape and find Smirnov's friends for help. A trembling Amelia stares blankly ahead and confesses that the terrifying monster chased her all the way here. Hero suddenly realizes with dread that this horrifying creature is the exact same one that caused Amelia's major injuries. Looking down in despair, the warcat tearfully apologizes to Hero and begs him to forget about her so he can escape. Smirnov furiously snaps at the pair and demands to know if they are going on a date instead of running away. The beastly bull suddenly rears its head back, causing Smirnov to panic as he recognizes the devastating incoming attack. The massive minotaur unleashes a terrifying torrent of blazing fire breath straight toward the defenseless group. Acting on pure instinct, Hero instantly jumps in front of Amelia and promises to block the deadly flames so she can run. With a barrage of magic resistance cards activating around him, Hero calmly accepts that dying to protect someone isn't a bad way to go. To his absolute shock, Hero opens his eyes and realizes he doesn't feel any heat at all from the raging inferno. Realizing his benevolent skill shielded them, he desperately searches for a way to strike back since their dire situation hasn't changed. Pulling up the heavily glitched gacha card, Hero determines that the unreadable revelation is his only remaining option left. He stares at the mysterious card through the flames while admitting he has absolutely no idea what kind of power or ability it holds. Glowing feathers suddenly drift around him as he firmly resolves to use the mysterious ability. Acknowledging the High Priest's warning that the card is extremely dangerous, Hero decides he must use it because it is all he has left. Surrounded by projections of all his other lost skills, Hero places his absolute faith in this one and only divine text lottery. Clenching the glowing card with fierce determination, he proudly declares that this unique lottery is his true skill. The skill description reveals it bestows divine treasures based on the number of times he performs self-sacrificing deeds in difficult situations. Sweating nervously, Hero realizes this divine power is basically just a gacha game and worries because his past life lottery luck was terrible. Shaking off his doubts, he loudly declares that this is definitely no time to be hesitating. Thrusting his hand forward, Hero boldly shouts to fully activate the divine text lottery skill. A brilliant glow erupts as a majestic angelic figure materializes behind him and gently drops a mysterious book. Catching the pristine tome, Hero hums in confusion and notes that the book gives off the gentle feeling of an innocent child. The cover reveals itself as the text of the divine dragon, boasting an incredibly rare and legendary status. Staring in sheer disbelief, Hero excitedly questions if he actually just pulled something genuinely amazing. He quickly flips open the heavy book to reveal complex magical circles and ancient scriptures. The pages violently explode with blinding light and chaotic magical energy, causing a panicked Hero to scream out in terror. A massive sphere of tightly bound magical scripture instantly materializes right in front of the stunned boy. Looking closely at the massive scripture-covered sphere, Hero realizes that this must be the legendary text of the divine dragon. Staring in pure shock at the giant orb, he deduces that it is actually a divine dragon's egg. A small instruction note suddenly appears on the shell as Hero desperately commands the divine dragon to come forth and protect them. The manual details that the slow-growing dragon requires a suitable environment and lots of meat to properly raise it. Sweating nervously, Hero complains that the divine dragon is asking for way too much while they are all about to be reduced to cinders. Smirnov frantically yells for the boy to watch out as the minotaur unleashes its fiery assault. Hero flinches and braces for the devastating impact as a massive shadow suddenly completely eclipses them. A colossal explosion rocks the entire forest as a massive shockwave brutally scatters the surrounding trees. Smirnov tightly shields Hero and Amelia with his own body while enduring the terrifying brunt of the blast. Checking on his newly formed comrades, the rugged bandit leader anxiously asks if the two of them are all right. A stunned Amelia stares up into the settling dust and murmurs that something massive just saved them from certain death. As the thick smoke finally clears with a heavy gust of wind, an exhausted Hero sighs that it is just one crazy thing after another. A majestic and towering ancient dragon with grand feathered wings and branching antlers now stands proudly before them. Smirnov sweats in absolute terror while admitting that not even he can take on an ancient dragon and a minotaur at the exact same time. The majestic dragon violently swats the minotaur aside while furiously yelling that the cowhead's ceaseless snorting is ruining its foul mood. Glaring down at the defeated beast, the dragon notes that the appetizing smell was likely just the minotaur roasting its own cow parts with fire breath. The majestic creature swiftly wraps its massive tail around the minotaur's neck while bitterly complaining that not a single part of the beast is actually edible. Squeezing its tail with bone-crushing force, the furious dragon decides to simply violently execute the minotaur instead of eating it. The minotaur's eyes roll back into its skull as the immense pressure brutally snaps its neck. Watching the terrifying display of raw power, a trembling Hero nervously wonders if the dragon is actually here to help them. Amelia stares in absolute awe while muttering that a proud dragon willingly helping humans is the kind of stuff that only happens in ancient legends. Turning its majestic gaze toward the tiny humans, the dragon scoffingly asks what possible merit there is for a noble creature to ever lend aid to mortals. The winged beast clarifies that it merely descended from the heavens because it felt the distinct presence of its own kind. Staring intently at the glowing scripture orb behind Hero, the dragon demands to know exactly where the boy acquired that presence. Sweating under the intense draconic gaze, Hero awkwardly admits that he didn't exactly get the egg so much as it simply popped out completely on its own. The dragon closes its eyes in quiet contemplation and calmly accepts the boy's bizarre explanation. Snaking its long tail carefully around the glowing egg, the beast declares that it shall take charge of the orb since it cannot be left out here in the wild. The ancient creature explains that this egg is a sacred keepsake of the divine dragon and allowing it to fall into human hands would be a massive blow to their draconic dignity. Flapping its massive feathered wings to take flight, the dragon bids the human child farewell but reminds him to never forget the life debt he now owes. Stepping forward with sudden resolve, Hero bravely interrupts the terrifying beast to request permission to take care of the egg himself since it was a power granted to him by the gods. The colossal dragon freezes in place and glares down at the audacious boy with piercing and narrowed eyes. Smirnov immediately panics and apologizes to the beast while urgently whispering to Hero that they definitely crossed a dangerous line and need to run away immediately. The tense silence is suddenly broken by a massive and echoing rumble, prompting the dragon to casually look away and admit that it was just its stomach growling. Hero and Smirnov and Amelia all stare at the fearsome creature in utter and deadpan disbelief at the completely anticlimactic moment. The dragon's massive belly jiggles as it embarrassingly confesses that moving so vigorously made its joints hurt and head spin due to the weight it gained from a rich diet. Slumping its heavy head onto the dirt with a pathetic groan, the ancient beast whines that it is currently on a fasting diet and no longer has the strength to fly. As the dragon's stomach unleashes another deafening gurgle, an exasperated Smirnov pinches his brow and begs the legendary creature to get it together. A blushing Amelia quietly apologizes, prompting the others to realize she is also dealing with her own severe hunger pangs. Clutching his own stomach with an awkward smile, Hero admits that he also feels rather hungry now that the intense battle is finally over. While Hero checks his empty bag for rations, a defeated Smirnov sighs that his bandit hideout unfortunately only has grass and booze to offer them. Pulling out an impressive bounty of pork, soy sauce, sugar, salt, and special herbs passed down by his race, Hero confidently prepares to cook a meal that will easily warm their exhausted bodies. Staring in absolute shock at the rare ingredients, both Smirnov and Amelia loudly exclaim in unison to ask if he truly possesses real soy sauce. Sniffing the unfamiliar dark liquid with deep curiosity, the bandit leader questions if this so-called soy sauce is truly as special as everyone claims it is. Flashing a confident and somewhat mischievous grin, Hero tells his new companions to leave everything to him because they absolutely will not regret it. The group quickly sets up a lively cooking station in the forest clearing, joyfully preparing the massive feast while the ancient dragon rests peacefully right behind them. Awakening to the irresistible aroma of the delicious food, the massive ancient dragon leans in closely with heavy drool dripping off its sharp teeth. Greedily chugging down a wooden mug of alcohol with loud gulps, an ecstatic Smirnoff happily declares that he simply cannot stop drinking. Devouring a massive wooden barrel of food in a single bite, the ancient dragon praises the absolutely divine meal and desperately demands to know what this incredible cooking is. Standing proudly before his highly satisfied diners, Hero cheerfully explains that he prepared a delicious pork ginger fry alongside a hearty bandit's hot pot. Watching the towering dragon and the rugged bandit leader aggressively scarf down their meals, a smiling Hero expresses his genuine relief that the warm food perfectly suits their tastes. Pausing mid-chew with a curious expression, Smirnoff asks what exactly Hero used to make the hot pot since the strange ingredients are so incredibly crunchy and delicious. Smirnoff spits out his food in pure horror as Hero casually reveals that he used some nearby wriggling slimes as the secret crunchy ingredient. Presenting perfectly filleted slices of the gelatinous monsters, Hero explains that he learned the preparation method from his maid since slime actually tastes incredibly good despite its bizarre appearance. Offering a steaming bowl to a highly skeptical Amelia, Hero cheerfully encourages her to eat to her heart's content. Since there are literally tons of edible slimes bouncing everywhere in the forest. Wiping his mouth and shifting to a much more serious tone, Smirnoff announces that there is something important he needs to ask the two young travelers. The bandit leader points out that this dangerous forest is heavily avoided even by seasoned adventurers and questions why a noble kid would ever be taking a casual stroll out here. Sitting comfortably on the grass, Hero explains that he was simply heading to his new territory up ahead when he stumbled across an unconscious Amelia on the side of the dirt road. Hearing this concerning revelation, a highly confused Smirnoff turns his gaze toward the war cat and asks exactly what happened to make her collapse like that. Looking away in obvious shame, Amelia awkwardly mumbles that she is the weak black sheep of her combat-oriented race and simply wanted to challenge herself. Connecting the dots immediately, Smirnoff leans forward and incredulously asks if she actually tried to fight that terrifying minotaur all by herself just to prove her strength. Sweating nervously under the bandit's intense scrutiny, the deeply embarrassed war cat hesitantly admits that he hit the nail right on the head. Glancing over at his injured companion, Hero gently notes that it is a very good thing he happened to have a magical elixir on hand to fully heal those severe wounds. Smirnoff erupts into total disbelief, loudly demanding to know why a noble would waste a priceless elixir on a complete stranger and where he even acquired such a legendary item. Maintaining his calm and gentle demeanor, Hero explains that the miraculous medicine was actually a cherished birthday gift from his late grandfather. He elaborates that he received such extravagant gifts because he was originally born as the eldest son and rightful heir to the prestigious Roswell family. Recognizing the famous name of the kingdom's guardian shield, Smirnoff's eyes widen as he realizes the young boy must have his own complicated and tragic circumstances. Smiling through his lingering pain, Hero confesses that his family replaced him with his younger brother after he failed to inherit the expected skills, eventually exiling him to manage this dangerous forest. Acknowledging the harsh reality of noble politics, Smirnoff bluntly points out that cashing in his massive S-rank bounty would easily give Hero enough prestige to reclaim his stolen airship. Staring back with unshakable resolve, Hero firmly declares that he has absolutely no intention of returning home or taking the bandit leader's head. Leaving Smirnoff utterly bewildered, Hero proudly states that he would gladly remain dirt poor if the only alternative is violently selling out the honorable man who just saved their lives. Leaning forward with a frustrated grimace, the seasoned outlaw warns the naive boy that being too nice to others will ultimately prevent him from ever gaining anything in this cruel world. Ignoring the cynical advice, Hero silently reflects on the beautiful poem from his past life that taught him to always prioritize the happiness of those who are suffering. Flashing a blindingly pure and radiant smile, the reincarnated noble proudly proclaims that a selfless savior is exactly the kind of person he truly wants to be. Utterly defeated by the boy's blindingly genuine kindness, Smirnoff clutches his forehead and mutters that they really stumbled across one hell of a nice guy. Realizing he now owes a massive life debt, the bandit leader decides to slowly pay Hero back for the expensive elixir before asking Amelia if she plans to tag along with her savior. Clenching her trembling fist with newfound determination, the deeply grateful war cat slowly addresses the young noble. Smirnov and his rugged crew suddenly stand tall behind the boy, eagerly offering to become his loyal underlings to provide all the muscle and fists he will ever need. Pounding his muscular chest with absolute confidence, the reformed outlaw promises that his surprisingly sincere men will serve their new lord exceptionally well. Pointing a stern finger at the towering men, Hero demands they officially give up all violence and stealing, a strict condition that Smirnov immediately and happily accepts. A flurry of magical skill cards magically materializes around the newly formed group as the young lord warmly shakes hands with the bandit leader to seal their brand new alliance. A rugged man guides a young boy forward as something massive and unseen sways into view nearby. The giant, antlered dragon rubs against the boy affectionately, demanding to know if he is being left out while complaining about the stench of alcohol. Thoroughly enamored by the boy's cooking, the dragon offers him the incredible honor of caring for the divine dragon's egg. Overjoyed by the trust placed in him, the boy declares that this pact officially makes them sworn friends. The massive beast leans in closely, eagerly anticipating many more delicious meals from his new companion. Promising a healthier menu for their next feast, the boy smiles warmly at the towering creature. A quiet moment settles between them as the surrounding forest seems to echo their newfound bond. Suddenly, a glowing status window appears showing an improved health buff, leaving the ancient dragon utterly bewildered. The magnificent creature stands tall in all its glory, its sheer scale dwarfing the young boy before it. Realizing the miraculous effects of the food, the dragon marvels at how his joint pain and mental fog have completely vanished. Feeling as though he has suddenly shed 1,000 years of age, the beast rejoices over his newly sharpened senses. Invigorated and craving 1,000 more servings of ginger fry, the dragon triumphantly takes to the skies to hunt devil boars. Watching his friend fly off, the boy panics and realizes this escalating situation is rapidly getting out of hand. The boy desperately cries out that he lacks the seasoning for 1,000 meals, prompting a deadpan ally to question his skewed priorities. Exasperated by the sheer absurdity, the rugged man admits he is completely lost but acknowledges the boy's boundless kindness. Throwing an arm around his shoulders, the man excitedly declares that things will be much more fun now that the boy is their new boss. Startled and flustered, the boy violently objects to being called the boss of a bandit crew when he is actually a lord. Caught completely off guard by the chaotic turn of events, the boy loses his balance and wildly tumbles backward. Instead of hitting the ground, he is caught and joyously launched into the air by a roaring crowd of celebratory bandits. Meanwhile, a sinister figure smirks from the shadows, chillingly greeting someone named Smirnov after a long absence. Two intimidating assassins step into the light, their cold eyes locked onto their target as they announce their lethal intentions. Stepping out of the shadows, the dark-clad assassin coldly announces he has come to take Smirnov's life after all this time. Unfazed by the deadly threat, Smirnov dryly remarks that he never hired a dark guild bounty hunter while noting Richard's bluntness. Hearing the ominous name, the young boy freezes in sheer panic as he remembers his father mentioning the terrifying syndicate. He recalls the chilling rumors of the secretive organization pulling the government strings from the shadows through brutal assassinations and torture. Sneering at his former rival, Richard mocks the once great hope of the Holy City's night order for falling so low as to scrap with petty bandits for pocket money. Narrowing his eyes at the stinging insult, the rugged warrior challenges the notion that he has fallen from grace. The young boy silently marvels at the hypocrisy, wondering how Smirnov can judge when he himself went from a wealthy noble to a mountain bandit. Striking an absurdly confident pose, Smirnov insists his noble birth is entirely obvious despite the boy's absolute disbelief. As Richard darkly swears to remember the slight, the cat girl and boy whisper to each other that Smirnov undeniably looks exactly like a savage bandit. Shrugging off their whispers, Smirnov explains he willingly severed ties with his family because the corrupt, tax-lining nobles disgusted him. Completely indifferent to the tragic backstory, Richard chillingly declares that the reason matters little since Smirnov is going to die today regardless. Refusing to back down, Smirnov warns the assassin that the fight won't be as easy as he thinks now that he has a fierce war cat on his side. Stepping heavily onto the battlefield, the massive female assassin recognizes a familiar voice and questions the presence of this supposed war cat. Flashing a predatory smile, the towering woman mockingly greets Amelia after their long time apart. Recognizing her childhood tormentor, Amelia's eyes widen in unadulterated terror. The imposing woman realizes this is where Amelia has been hiding and wonders aloud if the war cat actually has a purpose here. Licking her lips with sadistic glee, the assassin begins to tease a far darker motive for her presence. She cruelly asks if Amelia came crawling back to search the great forest ruins for their race's sacred treasure, Artemis's bow. As Amelia glares in silent rage, the woman brutally mocks her failure while dubbing her the weakest and most useless black sheep of their village. Trembling with frustration, Amelia listens as the assassin cruelly blames her utter uselessness on her defective eyes. The woman fondly recalls the days when Amelia was hailed as a child prodigy with the bow, acting like a hotshot who even tried to teach others. Smiling wickedly, she confesses how much she thoroughly enjoyed watching the prodigy's life turn upside down when her eyesight suddenly deteriorated. A bitter memory flashes of a deeply frustrated Amelia crawling on the ground while her rival mocked her inability to land a single hit during combat lessons. While the young boy yells in furious defense of his friend, the assassin shivers with perverse delight just thinking about Amelia's desperate, shattered expression. Quickly throwing an arm out to restrain the furious boy, Smirnoff warns him that charging the assassins is a terrible idea and a quick way to die. The boy realizes the terrifying truth that the Dark Guild isn't just a mob of thugs, but a group of legendary fighters skilled enough to rival 1,000 soldiers. Richard solemnly admits that back during the Holy City's tournament, he could barely land a strike on Smirnoff, and the bastard has only gotten stronger since then. Smirnoff smirks confidently, acknowledging that his opponent didn't earn the title of Sword Saint for nothing. Standing protectively beside Amelia, the young lord quietly praises the assassin for having a good eye for strength. Licking the edge of her blade, the female assassin gleefully notes that the boy would have been her very first victim if he had foolishly charged in. Stepping forward with a twisted sense of generosity, she decides to give the supposedly close friends a single chance to survive. Mocking her former peer, the towering war cat generously offers Amelia one completely free hit. Tauntingly exposing her form, she invites Amelia to take a good look and aim straight for her vitals if she wants any hope of winning. Gently patting the trembling war cat on the head, Smirnoff reassures her that everything will be fine because the god of war is on their side. Looking at her with unwavering faith, he confidently declares that she has the power to end this entire fight with a single strike. Paralyzed by her profound insecurities, Amelia desperately tries to explain that her failing eyesight makes such a feat entirely impossible. Remaining perfectly calm, Smirnoff softly interrupts her rising panic to offer a simple, alternative suggestion. He encourages her to just try her absolute best, promising that if it completely fails, they will simply turn around and run for their lives. A tense silence falls over the frozen battlefield as the small group stands their ground against the overwhelming threat. Empowered by her leader's unwavering trust, a small, confident smile finally breaks across Amelia's face. Touched by her leader's unwavering faith, Amelia quietly promises to do her absolute best and thanks him. Stepping up to face her towering opponent, the young war cat readies herself for the impossible shot. Muttering that she just needs to treat this like aiming a bow, Amelia steels her nerves and prepares to strike. Narrowing her eyes and calming her racing heart, she gathers every ounce of her focus to aim all her power directly at the target. With a fierce battle cry, she unleashes her devastating strike squarely into the assassin's chest. The impact freezes the battlefield for a split second as the two warriors lock eyes. Suddenly realizing her strike had absolutely zero effect, Amelia lets out a confused gasp as the giant woman grabs her. Before she can even react, the towering assassin casually thumps Amelia on the forehead and instantly knocks her out cold. Collapsing to the ground in a daze, Amelia weakly mutters in disbelief that her direct hit did absolutely nothing. Looking down at her fallen opponent, the assassin sneers that beasts will always just be beasts. Drawing his blade, Richard scolds them for getting cocky over playtime and announces that his real massacre begins now. Unfazed by the deadly threat, Smirnoff calmly agrees that the gap in their strength is indeed massive. Confident in his absolute victory, the dark assassin generously offers Smirnoff the honor of dying a true swordsman's death. He mockingly demands gratitude from his former rival just as a sudden blur of motion interrupts him. Exploding forward with blinding speed, Smirnoff brutally punches the arrogant assassin square in the jaw before he can even react. Standing triumphantly over his stunned foe, Smirnoff clarifies that the massive difference in power actually meant that he is the stronger one. Coughing up blood, The humiliated assassin curses Smirnov as a coward and sneers at his underhanded bandit fighting style. Scratching his head, Smirnov casually corrects him by explaining that he isn't a bandit anymore because he found a true lord to serve. When Richard mocks the mythical level of stupidity required to take in someone so troublesome, Smirnov simply points right at the young boy sitting nearby. The newly appointed lord of the Great Forest, Hero Roswell, offers an incredibly awkward and nervous laugh at the sudden attention. Glaring fiercely at the unassuming child, the assassin angrily dismisses the entire revelation as pure bullshit. Shaking off his injuries, Richard demands his towering partner wake up and declares a sudden change of plans to kill the brat immediately. Smirnov smirks knowingly and asks if the assassins still plan to attack after seeing what comes next. Throwing his head back, Smirnov loudly bellows to the heavens that there won't be any ginger fry left if their trump card doesn't hurry up. A massive, earth-shattering boom rocks the battlefield as a colossal beast violently touches down, leaving the assassins screaming in sheer disbelief. Trembling in absolute terror, the assassins wildly demand to know why a mythical, legendary monster has suddenly appeared before them. The ancient dragon casually asks about the newcomers, prompting Smirnov to explain that these strangers want to murder Boss Hero. Looming over the terrified assassins, the dragon furiously roars that anyone targeting his personal chef will become his dinner instead. Paralyzed by the dragon's overwhelming aura, the assassins instantly pass out from fear, leaving the great beast thoroughly disappointed by their weakness. Watching the unconscious bodies, Hero nervously wonders if they overdid it, but Smirnov insists a brutal display of force was necessary to prevent future attacks. Still staring at her hands, Amelia admits she is completely shocked that she managed to unleash such a powerful attack. Smirnov gives her a warm, knowing smile and reminds her that he promised the god of war was fighting on their side. Deeply confused by the recurring phrase, Hero finally asks Smirnov to explain exactly who this mysterious god of war is. Instead of answering directly, the rugged warrior gently addresses Lord Hero and asks about his inherent military command skills. Checking his glowing status window, the young lord confirms that he does indeed possess several incredibly potent support buffs like military command and territory management. Smirnov reveals that the terrifying true identity of the god of war is actually Hero himself, whose perfectly stacked buff effects turn his allies into unstoppable juggernauts. Letting out a sheepish sigh, the unassuming boy admits he kind of wishes those incredible powers would just make him physically stronger instead. Firmly shaking his head, Smirnov proudly declares that a true lord possesses a fundamentally different and far more valuable kind of strength than mere individual fighters. Thanks to his buffs, Hero now commands the sure-hit bow maiden Amelia and the mythic tier sword Saint Smirnov, whose blade rivals 1,000 soldiers. Furthermore, he is sworn friends with an ancient dragon who serves as the sacred keeper of the divine dragon's egg. Smirnov grins and informs the flustered boy that the loyal allies he gathered purely through kindness now possess enough raw power to rival an entire country's military force. Meanwhile, far away from the chaotic forest, a quiet tension settles over the elegant halls outside the Roswell family study. An enigmatic woman explains she only arrived at the merchant guild's behest because of the family's suspicious behavior, never expecting to discover they had exiled their own eldest son. Sitting rigidly at his desk, the cold patriarch aggressively orders the great sage to leave immediately, refusing to let her but into their private family matters. Flashing a dangerous smile, the great sage produces a massive debt ledger and smoothly mocks the man for his chilling lack of concern. Scowling furiously, the stubborn nobleman commands great sage Lillian to deliver a definitive message back to those meddling idiots. He viciously boasts that exiling his useless son will quickly generate enough wealth to clear their debt, silently prompting Lillian to wonder who the truly useless one actually is. Turning her back on the arrogant fool, the sage coldly announces that this will likely be the very last time she ever graces their estate with her presence. Letting a delicate white flower slip through her fingers, she issues a final, ominous warning about the path he has chosen. With a chilling smirk, Lillian promises the doomed nobleman that the very ground he stands on is nothing but a one-way gateway to absolute destruction. Amelia violently kicks the wolf away, causing a massive magical explosion as Hero yells for her to get down. The stunned beast crashes heavily into the ground while Amelia lands gracefully near Hero. Hovering over him protectively, she asks if he is alright, and he confirms he somehow survived. Realizing the dire wolves are hunting the Dragon Lord's egg, she tells Hiro they must flee before the pack gathers, just as another wolf lunges at them. Amelia swiftly strikes the leaping wolf away with a devastating kick to the jaw. Undeterred, two more dire wolves aggressively emerge from the tree-line. Blushing deeply, Amelia holds on to Hiro as he frantically asks if she is okay. Hiro apologizes for not noticing the danger in time, lamenting that they really should have forced Smirnoff's crew to escort them. Unfortunately, all of Smirnoff's crew is currently passed out over barrels from a severe hangover. Smirnoff was the only one capable of handling the dangerous underground guild situation. To make matters worse, the ancient dragon is currently out hunting a demon boar for dinner. Hiro nervously notes that continuing alone is too risky since the monster encounters will only increase from here. Consulting their map, Hiro informs Amelia that they should be seeing the village and the lord's estate nearby. Spotting a chimney through the trees, Amelia excitedly points it out and wonders if it belongs to the mansion. Relieved by the sight, Hiro drops his shoulders and states they can finally take a proper rest. Amelia smiles hopefully, though Hiro immediately second-guesses if they actually can relax. They finally arrive at a large, dilapidated mansion completely overgrown with vines and severely damaged. Taking in the ruined state of the mansion and the absent village, Hiro recalls hearing this was a harsh land. Hiro stammers in utter disbelief, questioning if he has truly been appointed as the lord of a completely ruined territory. Confirming the location by the crest on the wall, Amelia suggests they head inside, hoping she is wrong about the place. They cautiously walk up the cracked stone pathway toward the overgrown and broken entrance. Observing the absolute ruins around them, Amelia desperately hopes they can find at least one usable room. They enter a surprisingly intact room where a giant tree from out back has grown completely through the walls. Hiro notes the room is strangely clean, theorizing the massive tree shielded it from wind and rain. Deciding to make this room their base, they carefully set down the wrapped dragon egg by the tree trunk. Hiro examines a sharp piece of magic ore he found, explaining it is commonly used for fuel. Amelia wonders out loud why such a valuable item would be left behind in this abandoned place. Hiro suggests a past camper might have left it, and he decides to gratefully put it to use in the fireplace. Admitting he is a little nervous since it has been a while, Hiro points his finger at the floating ore. With a sudden burst of energy, Hiro successfully ignites the ore using a flash of fire magic. Startled by the sudden flames, Amelia asks in shock if Hiro can use magic too. Hiro modestly explains he only knows basic lifestyle magic, which he learned as part of his noble education. Gathering her resolve, Amelia approaches Hiro and admits she has something rude to say. She bluntly states that his father must have known the terrible state of this land, suggesting nobles would easily sacrifice their own children. Frustrated on his behalf, she compares his appointment to a death sentence wrapped in a convenient lie. Hiro's expression immediately darkens as he strictly commands her never to say something like that again. Softening his tone, he explains that both kindness and resentment will eventually come back around to you. Noting her guilty reaction, he correctly deduces that she has felt bad about lying that her Minotaur encounter was just a trial of skill. Confronting her gently, Hiro asks her to reveal the real reason she was being chased by the monster. Looking determined, Amelia reveals her true goal is to obtain the divine artifact of clairvoyance, the Bow of Artemis, to save her sister. Amelia explains that the divine insight of clairvoyance allows the user to sense a target's location regardless of distance. Hiro questions what this has to do with saving her sister, prompting Amelia to clarify that the artifact allows someone with poor eyesight to effectively wield a bow. Gripping a small pendant around her neck, Amelia reveals that their parents died young from illness, leaving just her and her sister. She explains that just the other day, they received a formal request from the village elite demanding someone from the lowest-ranking family be taken into permanent service. The horrifying reality of the demand meant they would be taken as playthings for the elite's son and kept captive for life. Enraged by the insane demand, Hiro insists they must refuse, but Amelia grimly replies she would if she could. She explains that among the Warkatir tribe, an annual martial arts tournament determines each family's social rank. Because their clan forces the weak to submit to the strong, her family has consistently ranked at the very bottom since she became the head. To save her sister from this cruel fate, Amelia must somehow prove her strength in the next tournament exactly 1 month from now. Displaying the clairvoyance revelation, she declares this is exactly why she desperately needs the Bow of Artemis. Although she is incredibly confident in her unmatched archery skills, her deteriorating eyesight has crippled her abilities. She bitterly admits her poor vision caused her to fail completely, leaving her unable to even handle the Minotaur in the temple. Staring downward in despair, Amelia realizes that at this rate, her sister is doomed. The terrifying image of her sister bound in chains flashes through her mind as she laments her stolen future. Driven by fierce devotion, Amelia vows to protect her sister no matter the cost to herself. Looking at her with steady resolve, Hiro gently asks if she wants to try an alternative solution. He offers to use his magic to help her, even though it isn't a divine artifact. Warning her that he cannot guarantee success or explain exactly what he will do, Hiro asks her to close her eyes for a moment. Amelia blushes deeply as Hiro steps incredibly close and gently touches the side of her face. Her mind races with panicked thoughts, wondering if he is about to kiss her like a prince breaking a curse in a fairy tale. Trembling with anticipation, she braces herself for the romantic gesture she feels completely unready for. To her sudden surprise, Hiro simply steps back and calmly tells her she can open her eyes. Blinking in utter confusion, Amelia touches her face and asks what he just placed on her. Hiro explains that the device is a vision-enhancing tool called glasses. Examining the thin lenses, Amelia marvels at the craftsmanship and asks how he managed to carry them around. Hiro reveals that he actually used a scavenged metal frame and filled it with magically crafted ice instead of glass. He notes that while the design is based on memories from his past life, he can adjust the magical ice to perfectly fit her specific eyesight. A drop of water suddenly rolls down Amelia's face as Hiro hastily apologizes for the melting ice. Looking around in sheer wonder, Amelia excitedly declares that even though distant objects are slightly blurry, she can finally see her hands and the entire room. Her sharp feline eyes widen with absolute joy as her vision miraculously clears. Overcome with immense gratitude, Amelia tightly embraces the flustered Hiro and thanks him profusely. Still holding him close, she softly whispers that there is one more thing she can finally see clearly. Smiling warmly into his eyes, Amelia tells the blushing Hiro that he has a remarkably handsome face. Hiro instantly panics, his face erupting in a bright red blush as he stammers about her sudden bold compliment. Leaning in with a teasing smile, she suggests he drop the formalities and simply call her Amelia. The two stand intimately close together, completely lost in the quiet, romantic tension of the moment. Their faces draw agonizingly near as they both part their lips to speak. Suddenly, a loud noise shatters the silence, causing both of them to violently flinch and jump apart. Flustered and breathing heavily, Amelia frantically asks what just made that sound. They turn to see a blinding light erupting from massive cracks in the giant dragon egg. Shielding his eyes from the intense glare, Hiro yells in shock as the protective cloth and the egg itself begin glowing fiercely. Holographic revelation cards suddenly manifest in the air around them, displaying powerful dragon blessings. Hiro watches in absolute awe as two of the glowing revelation books physically merge into a brand new dragon-related artifact. The combined cards instantly forge into the legendary Divine Dragon Master Revelation. As the glowing shell splinters apart, Amelia gasps in shock and points out that the egg is finally hatching. Hiro stares at the shattering shell, terrified of the incredibly powerful Lord Divine Dragon that even the ancient dragon bowed to. The blinding light fades to reveal a surprisingly tiny silhouette, leaving them both utterly speechless. A beautiful, naked dragon girl with tiny horns sits amidst the broken eggshells as they both stare in utter disbelief. A cheerful laugh echoes through the ruined courtyard as splashing water fills an old wooden tub. Amelia carefully bathes the squirming dragon girl, urging her to hold still so the soap doesn't sting her eyes. The little girl giggles uncontrollably, squirming away because the thick bubbles tickle too much. Peeking innocently over the rim of the wooden tub, the dragon girl asks why her papa isn't joining them. Amelia gently explains that their papa is very busy sewing clothes and doing the laundry for them. Realizing something important, Amelia pauses thoughtfully and mentions the sudden change of clothes. Bursting from the bathhouse completely naked, Amelia and the dragon girl playfully scold Hiro not to peek. The two naked girls joyfully grab onto the flustered Hiro, demanding to know why he won't join them in the bath. Blushing furiously, Hiro stammers in absolute panic while desperately trying to avert his eyes from Amelia's exposed body. Squeezing his eyes tightly shut, Hiro begs the girls to forget this deeply embarrassing encounter ever happened. Amelia frantically apologizes to Hiro, who has dramatically collapsed face first onto the stone floor in pure shock while the dragon girl playfully declares him dead. Groaning from the floor, Hiro laments that everything was going fine until the divine Duke Dragon suddenly hatched and ruined his peace. Amelia stares at the tiny girl, struggling to comprehend that this innocent child is actually the legendary divine Duke Dragon. Hiro nervously points out that the mythical leader of the dragons was supposed to be a massive ancient beast, not a humanoid child. Wondering if the newborn can even speak yet, Amelia pragmatically suggests they try asking her directly. The tiny dragon girl sits silently in her cracked eggshell, blinking blankly as she stares back at them. Tilting her head in confusion, the little girl softly mutters the words for mother and father. Launching herself forward, the dragon girl enthusiastically tackles a stunned Amelia and calls her mama. Completely bewildered by the sudden title, Amelia asks Hiro how they ended up in this crazy situation. Hiro nervously explains that he has heard rumors about the dragon race automatically imprinting on others. Realizing the implications, he deduces that the newborn dragon has imprinted on the very first people she saw upon hatching. Confirming his theory, the little girl cheerfully points at Amelia as her mother and Hiro as her father. Utterly overwhelmed by their sudden parenthood, the two stand awkwardly in the ruins, wondering what to do next. Regaining her composure, Amelia scoops up the giggling child and declares that both of them urgently need a proper bath. The cheerful sounds of splashing water echo from the makeshift bath as Amelia successfully cleans the energetic little dragon. Exhausted from the sudden ordeal, Hiro rubs his aching back and sighs, wondering how his life took such a drastic turn. Staring at the system interface detailing the dragon's slow maturation process, Hiro realizes he is now fully responsible for raising a daughter. Surveying the dilapidated mansion, he despairs over their complete lack of supplies and proper living conditions for a growing child. His depressing thoughts are interrupted by the little girl, who innocently asks if his tummy hurts because he looks so weak. Reassuring her that he is fine, Hiro watches in awe as the newly bathed dragon girl approaches him wearing an adorable maid outfit. Hiro expresses sheer amazement that Amelia managed to create such cute clothes in such a short amount of time. Amelia modestly admits she just took apart the old sheets and her bed canopy, though she is relieved the child likes it. Blushing slightly, Amelia nervously asks if the outfit looks alright since she has never actually dressed anyone before. Hiro warmly compliments the craftsmanship, assuring her that the outfit and the tied hair look absolutely perfect. Hearing the praise, the little dragon girl happily grabs her skirt and asks if she is cute. Amelia smiles warmly and confirms that the divine Duke Dragon is indeed incredibly cute. Pointing at herself in awe, the little girl seems surprised to learn she is the legendary leader of the dragon race. Trying to pronounce her intimidating title, the toddler awkwardly fumbles over the complex syllables. Amelia fiercely declares that the toddler's butchered pronunciation of her title makes her sound even more adorable. Seeing an opportunity, Hiro gently suggests they should just give her a proper nickname instead of calling her by a formal title. Throwing her hands down in exasperation, Amelia scolds the tiny dragon and declares that the title Shinryuko is way too hard to say. Hiro stares blankly ahead and calmly agrees that she is absolutely right. Observing the toddler closely, Hiro notes her cute horns and red eyes, marveling that this tiny girl is actually the leader of the dragon race. Smiling gently, Hiro suggests they call her something fitting for a golden, shining divine dragon. Looking directly at the curious toddler, Hiro proposes the cute nickname Joel-chan. Stepping forward, Hiro explains to Amelia that the name comes from the word gold. The tiny dragon girl cheerfully repeats the end of her new nickname. Overjoyed by her new identity, Joel flashes a massive, bright smile. Excitedly yelling for her mama, Joel happily embraces her new name. Blushing fiercely, Amelia nervously admits that being called mama and papa makes her feel strangely self-conscious. He melancholically reminisces about discussing finance with his father, mistakenly believing the man actually enjoyed spending time with him. A deep sense of sorrow washes over Hiro as he considers the isolation he has felt since before he was even born. Lowering his eyes in quiet despair, Hiro painfully admits that he never had anything resembling a true family. Breaking the somber mood, Joel points proudly at herself and cheerfully declares that she can fix his loneliness. Beaming with innocent joy, Joel explains that spending time with her papa and mama is incredibly fun. Reaching out with her tiny hands, Gol firmly grabs both Hiro and Amelia to pull them closer. Yanking the flustered pair together, Gol happily screams that she loves them both. Touched by her sweet words, Hiro and Amelia warmly hug the giggling toddler and thank her for teaching them such a valuable lesson. Stepping back with a proud smile, Hiro declares they should give the smart little girl a special reward. Gol immediately protests when Hiro approaches the wash tub, assuming he wants her to do more chores. Telling her to watch closely, Hiro forms a circle with his fingers and gently blows through it. The little girl stares in absolute wonder as magical, shimmering spheres float gracefully into the air. Reaching out to touch the floating orbs, Gol excitedly asks if this beautiful display is her papa's magic. Hiro explains they are just soap bubbles, leaving Gol completely amazed as she calls for Amelia to look. Spotting Amelia standing quietly nearby, Hiro turns and asks if something is wrong. Blushing furiously and scratching his head, Hiro awkwardly blurts out that she looks really beautiful. Deeply flustered by the sudden compliment, Amelia frantically waves her hands and blames her different outfit for the illusion. Noticing their strange behavior, Gol peeks over the rim of the tub and asks what is wrong. Leaning in with an overly curious expression, Gol bluntly asks if they are about to kiss. Both Hiro and Amelia recoil in absolute panic, demanding to know why she would suddenly say something so serious. Innocently gesturing with her hands, Gol explains that she saw parents kiss from inside her egg whenever they looked like that. Frantically waving his arms in denial, Hiro begs Amelia for help to explain the embarrassing misunderstanding. Completely abandoning him to his fate, Amelia abruptly claims she needs to prepare food and runs away. Watching her flee, Gol bursts into laughter and teases her papa for getting rejected. Smiling softly, Hiro rests his hand gently on Gol's head and decides that her new nickname makes her even cuter. Looking over his ruined estate, Hiro vows to transform the territory into a happy place to give Gol the best life possible. Beaming up at him, Gol promises to laugh a lot because she has so much fun being with her papa. Reflecting on his past life, Hiro realizes that protecting someone like his little sister or Gol is the true source of his strength. A sudden, terrifying scream shatters the peaceful moment, prompting Gol to urgently warn Hiro that her mama is in danger. Sitting peacefully in the grass, Hiro turns his attention to the squirming little girl and asks what she needs. Holding the toddler firmly, Amelia explains that Gol is upset because playing with one parent means she cannot simultaneously play with the other. Shifting the conversation entirely, Hiro opens a large metal case and tells Amelia he needs her to look at something important. Throwing the lid wide open, Hiro stares down in absolute dismay and reveals that almost all of their food supplies have mysteriously vanished. Amelia nervously breaks into a cold sweat as she apologizes for her carelessness, while an innocent Gol bluntly asks if her mother ate the missing food. Hiro explains that he foolishly stored a leftover slime with their provisions, completely unaware that the voracious monster was actually still alive. This horrifying discovery perfectly explains why Amelia had screamed in absolute terror and dramatically fainted when she opened the bag the day before. Amelia stares in utter shock as Hiro grimly reports that their only remaining sustenance is a single piece of dried meat and some basic seasonings. Suddenly, a tall, imposing stranger steps into the clearing and casually mentions he came to pay his respects after sensing the birth of the new divine dragon lord. Enraged by Hiro's completely blank stare, the mysterious man leans in aggressively and demands to know why he is being treated with such blatant disrespect. Sighing in pure exasperation, the horned stranger sits heavily on the grass while a sweating Hiro politely asks for his identity. The stranger narrows his sharp eyes in sheer disbelief, deeply insulted that his sworn ally could forget his face so quickly. Processing the familiar phrase, Hiro widens his eyes as a terrifying realization suddenly dawns on him. Staring up at the dignified, humanoid figure adorned with elegant robes and antlers, Hiro realizes this eccentric man is actually the terrifying ancient dragon. Scoffing haughtily, the ancient beast points out the obvious and proudly declares that he looks exactly like himself. Releasing a heavy sigh, Hiro deadpans that it is an absolute miracle they even managed to recognize the monster based on such ridiculous logic. The starving dragon eagerly asks if breakfast is ready, only to be completely blindsided when Hiro bluntly informs him that they merely have dried meat left. Gesturing in sheer panic, the ancient beast explains that a tiny scrap of dried meat is utterly useless because even a dragon child eats significantly more than a full-grown human. Turning his gaze toward the forest, the dragon declares he could easily hunt a giant demon boar, stressing that they must resolve this food crisis immediately. Suddenly dropping his dramatic flair, the ancient being looks directly at Hiro with intense seriousness and asks for a personal favor. Bowing his head slightly, he formally requests permission to become the tiny divine dragon's official mentor. He passionately explains that every unique race possesses sacred customs and specific techniques that only their own kind can properly pass down. Hiro listens intently as the dragon points out that two humans will inevitably lack the specialized knowledge required to properly raise a dragon. Kneeling down to meet the toddler's gaze, Hiro gently tells Gol to listen to the ancient beast's offer and make her own decision. Smiling warmly, Hiro encourages his adopted daughter, admitting that learning from an older, wiser dragon would be incredibly beneficial for her future. The majestic ancient dragon stands tall in the clearing, waiting with absolute confidence for the child's inevitable acceptance. A bead of nervous sweat rolls down the ancient beast's face as the tiny toddler stares blankly at him in total silence. Throwing her hands up in absolute joy, Gol cheerfully agrees to play with her new gramps. Utterly horrified by the disrespectful nickname, the prideful dragon violently rejects the title and furiously swears to raise her into a proper, dignified ruler. Unintimidated, the fierce toddler marches right up to the massive ancient being and aggressively establishes her own absolute rules. Completely ignoring his dramatic protests, Gol triumphantly climbs onto the defeated dragon's back and excitedly orders her new steed to march forward. Hiro calmly waves goodbye as the ancient being rockets into the sky with the screaming, joyful toddler clinging tightly to his horns. With the dragon occupied, Hiro turns his serious gaze back to the ruined camp and focuses entirely on solving their immediate starvation problem. Stepping forward with newfound resolve, Amelia quietly interrupts his grim thoughts. Placing a determined hand over her heart, the feline warrior volunteers to head into the dangerous forest to hunt for their survival. She humbly explains that since the ancient beast took over the role of mentor, securing food is the best way she can prove her usefulness to their little family. Drawing on her tribal heritage, she details how the catfolk survived the harsh winters by hunting daily and meticulously stockpiling every scrap of leftover meat. Furthermore, she expertly notes that harvested monster parts like horns and pelts can be bartered for precious spices or crafted into vital survival tools. Hiro looks thoroughly impressed by her deep survival knowledge but pragmatically asks how she plans to hunt without any proper weapons. Amelia instantly breaks into a nervous sweat, awkwardly stammering that she might be able to scrounge up some basic traps to catch small game. Hiro decides it's faster to demonstrate the trap-making process directly since they are short on time. Amelia explains that the simplest traps require only vines and sticks, which is the very first hunting method catfolk children learn. She instructs Hiro that they must always source their materials on-site, preventing animals from detecting the traps by a foreign smell. Leading the way to a nearby game trail, Amelia explains that they can easily braid vines for rope and use local tree branches for the setup. Hiro nervously surveys the forest, worrying that the game trail leading from the Vilewood might harbor seriously dangerous creatures. Sensing his apprehension, Amelia reassures him that she thoroughly scouted the area beforehand and found no dangerous presences. Relieved by her expertise, Hiro notes that they might even be able to forage for wild vegetables while they hunt. Her feline tail twitching with alert focus, Amelia strictly warns him that they still must not let their guard down. Shivering at the memory of their food-stealing mishap, Hiro traumatically recalls that giant slimes can easily swallow a full-grown adult whole. Halting near a thicket, Amelia surveys the terrain and declares they have found a perfect spot. Dropping to her knees, the skilled huntress confidently announces she will begin setting the trap. Deftly handling the gathered vines, Amelia demonstrates the initial knotting process. She proudly presents the completed snare hidden under leaves, planning to set 3 more identical traps along the animal trails. When Hiro notes her cheerful demeanor, Amelia blushes and admits she is just happy to finally be useful to him. Spotting a distant bird, Amelia asks Hiro to prepare her magical glasses while she readies herself for a ranged attack. Hiro swiftly channels his magic, conjuring the custom ice lenses into the metal frames to restore her perfect vision. Gazing at the distant target, Amelia laments lacking a bow, leaving Hiro to wonder how she plans to hit it from so far away. Pulling out a sturdy woven cord, Amelia proudly reveals that her tribe specializes in the sling, a signature weapon capable of felling large game. Winding up her stance with a small stone, she explains that she will hold back her strength since a bird is such a fragile target. With a swift and practiced motion, Amelia forcefully hurls the stone through the air. The tiny projectile breaks the sound barrier, rocketing toward the target like a destructive meteor. A devastating explosion violently erupts in the distant trees, completely annihilating the intended target area. Trembling in absolute shock at the massive crater, they both nervously realize how lucky it was that she held back her immense power. Sweating profusely, Amelia resolves to practice controlling her terrifying new strength. Watching her panic, Hiro silently notes that suddenly receiving a massive power boost from a divine artifact is not always a pure blessing. Retrieving the miraculously intact bird, Amelia sighs in relief that the precious food was merely knocked out rather than blown to bits. A cheerful shout suddenly echoes from above as they spot Gol and the ancient dragon standing perilously on the mansion's high roof. Staring up in utter confusion, Hiro and Amelia wonder what the toddler is doing so high up. Beaming with innocent pride, Gol yells for them to watch as she prepares to demonstrate a cool new trick. Taking a massive breath, the tiny dragon unleashes an absolutely terrifying beam of pure energy into the sky. The concentrated roar pierces the heavens, detonating into a blinding explosion that violently shatters the cloud cover. Looking incredibly smug as charred debris rains down, the ancient dragon proudly boasts that this absolute devastation is the result of his expert training. The ancient beast praises Gol as a true prodigy, revealing she has already mastered the catastrophic annihilating roar. Sprinting back to a stunned Hiro, the giggling toddler eagerly demands to be praised for her incredible display of power. Gently patting her head while hiding his internal terror, Hiro manages to praise the terrifyingly impressive feat, puffing out his chest with supreme arrogance. The ancient beast invites Hiro to shower him with well-deserved praise. Fixing the dragon with an absolute death glare, an infuriated Hiro bluntly declares that the mentor will not be getting any dinner tonight. Grabbing the panicked dragon by the robes, Hiro furiously reminds him of their dire food shortage while the beast whines about his unappreciated genius. Eyes wide with desperate rage, Hiro screams that the irresponsible attack just vaporized days' worth of potential food in their starving territory. Refusing to back down, Hiro insists the punishment stands, completely ignoring the ancient dragon's tearful pleas for mercy. Desperate to avoid starvation, the sweating dragon begs his tiny student to intervene on his behalf. Blinking her large eyes innocently, Gol pauses to consider her grandfather's desperate plea. Betraying him instantly, the drooling toddler cheerfully declares she will eat his share of the food, leaving the ancient beast to wail in absolute despair. Meanwhile, a mysterious bespectacled woman watches the chaotic scene from afar, sinisterly musing that this remote lord might represent a highly profitable opportunity. A series of heavy thuds violently echoes across the ruined courtyard of the dilapidated mansion. Lowering her bow, Amelia stares intently at the arrow she just flawlessly sunk into the dead center of a distant tree trunk. Relaxing comfortably against a nearby tree, Hiro smiles and notes that her training seems to be going quite well. Her glasses glinting sharply in the sunlight, Amelia confidently declares that next week's martial arts tournament will be a breeze now that her vision is fully restored. Hiro nods in agreement, noting they only need the ancient dragon to return with staple foods, just as a cheerful shout interrupts his thoughts. Gol excitedly announces her return by violently tackling Hiro, triggering a system alert that compares the toddler's terrifying physical resistance to a sturdy titan. Groaning in sheer agony from the devastating impact, Hiro struggles to stay upright while asking the energetic toddler how her hunt went. Throwing her hands high into the air, Gol excitedly proclaims that she caught something amazing and brought back lots of food. Intrigued by the bold boast, Hiro and Amelia wonder aloud what kind of incredible prey the tiny dragon managed to secure. Sprinting ahead with uncontained excitement, Gol frantically waves for her parents to hurry up and follow her. The tiny toddler stands proudly atop an absolutely massive, terrifying mountain of slaughtered, high-level monster corpses. Beaming with innocent pride, Gol eagerly asks the completely stunned Hiro what he thinks of her incredibly large catch. Hiro stares in absolute horror, immediately recognizing the terrifying forms of a devil boar and a sea serpent mixed into the bloody pile. To his mounting dread, he spots even more dangerous creatures, including a massive minotaur and a deadly Medusa. Turning an icy, furious glare toward the sweating ancient dragon, Hiro strictly reminds his mentor that he explicitly asked for staple foods. When the arrogant beast huffs dismissively, an exasperated Hiro demands to know why he hunted completely inedible monsters instead of normal meat. Averting his eyes in deep embarrassment, the ancient beast shamelessly admits he just wanted to show off his overwhelming power to his new student. He stubbornly defends his reckless actions, claiming that slaughtering disaster-class monsters like Medusas is the absolute perfect way to display true strength. Releasing a heavy sigh, Hiro acknowledges the beast's immense power but sternly reiterates that he had a highly practical reason for requesting normal food. Gesturing to their primitive camp, Hiro explains that smoking is their only preservation method, meaning excess meat will inevitably just rot away. The ancient beast attempts to sound profoundly philosophical, smoothly arguing that rotting flesh naturally decomposes to enrich the soil and continue the great circle of life. Thoroughly defeated by the beast's grand natural logic, an exhausted Hiro reluctantly admits that the dragon isn't technically wrong. Suddenly raising her hand, Gol cheerfully volunteers to eat the entire mountain of meat right away since her tiny body can apparently consume endless amounts of food. To Hiro's sudden shock, a terrified human man cowers on the ground near the smug toddler, desperately begging not to be eaten. Stepping forward, Amelia calmly explains that the mysterious stranger accidentally stumbled right into one of her hidden pitfall traps. Leaning in closely to sniff the trembling captive, a drooling Gol notes that he smells delicious and will probably taste incredibly good too. The panicked captive flails his arms wildly, desperately screaming for the terrifying group to just spare a second to listen to him. Hastily adjusting his crooked monocle, the sweating man frantically introduces himself as Jack. Trying to regain his professional composure, Jack explains he is a traveling merchant from the Ardwick Trading Company who regularly does business in the Rothwell territory. Narrowing her feline eyes in deep suspicion, Amelia sharply points out that it is incredibly suspicious for a merchant to travel without a single wagon or bag. Gesturing proudly to a tiny pouch tied securely to his waist, Jack confidently claims that all of his precious merchandise is stored right there. He reveals the small pouch is actually a powerful magical artifact left by his father, capable of easily storing an entire warehouse worth of items. Unfortunately, Jack violently complains that he also inherited his father's massive debt, and the newly skyrocketing local prices make it impossible to conduct any profitable business. Sighing in total defeat, the merchant explains he simply uses this ruined mansion as a safe stopover while traveling to other territories just to scrape by a meager living. Noting that he secretly spotted their group resting here last week, Jack decided to finally step forward today to formally introduce himself. Hiro's expression darkens as he grimly realizes the devastating effects of his brother's heavy taxes are already destroying the territory's economy much faster than anticipated. Analyzing the dire situation, Hiro notes that Jack should easily be outperforming other merchants with his magical storage artifact, yet the man remains completely broke. Clenching his fist in quiet determination, Hiro vows he must take immediate action before those two completely destroy the Rothwell territory. Completely misreading his grim silence, a concerned Gol tugs at his clothes and innocently asks if her massive catch was somehow disappointing. Snapping out of his dark thoughts, Hiro quickly reassures the toddler and explains they absolutely cannot eat Jack because shopkeepers bring them tasty things. Screaming in frustration, Gol demands to know what they should do because she desperately wants to eat something tasty while Hiro stands silently, deep in thought. Breaking the tense silence, Hiro casually suggests that their best course of action is to simply apologize to Jack. Drooling uncontrollably over the merchant, Gol reluctantly bows and apologizes to the terrified, tasty-looking person. Smiling warmly, Hiro gently strokes the little dragon's head and praises her for doing such a good job. Releasing a massive sigh of relief, Jack slumps onto the grass and expresses his deep gratitude for clearing up the terrifying misunderstanding. Extending his hand respectfully, the traveling merchant formally apologizes for causing the group so much unnecessary trouble. Stepping forward, Hiro officially introduces himself as an adopted member of the Rothwell family who was assigned to this ruined territory under the Lord's direct orders. Shocking the merchant completely, Hiro generously offers to let him continue using the dilapidated mansion entirely for free. Flinging her arm out in protest, an outraged Amelia furiously demands to know what they will do if the merchant is secretly lying to them. Staring at Hiro with wide, intense eyes, the feline warrior fiercely scolds him for being way too naive and freely accepting every suspicious stranger. Desperately worried for his safety, Amelia warns that his reckless kindness will eventually get him seriously hurt, and she cannot bear to see that happen. Looking at her with steady resolve, Hiro gently apologizes but firmly states that as the lord of this land, his absolute duty is something he cannot back down on. Listening quietly, a solemn Jack lowers his gaze as Hiro explains that a selfish ruler can never truly save the people who desperately beg for help. Turning back to the worried warrior, Hiro calmly concedes that she is completely right about the undeniable risk of being used or deceived by malicious opportunists. Flashing a gentle, unwavering smile, Hiro reaffirms his ultimate conviction to do what is right despite the constant danger. Raising his hand with pure sincerity, the young lord swears that he will always reach out to save anyone who desperately asks for his help. Blushing deeply and averting her gaze, a thoroughly defeated Amelia mutters that she cannot argue against such an absolutely pure and clear conviction. Chuckling to himself, Jack remarks on Hiro's ridiculously big heart, suddenly understanding exactly why such powerful creatures fiercely follow the young boy. Blushing modestly under the sudden praise, Hiro awkwardly rubs his neck and points out that they are currently struggling just to survive their own messy situation. Staring bleakly at their surroundings, Hiro laments his pathetic status as a lord with absolutely no citizens, a ruined estate, and a massive pile of rapidly spoiling monster corpses. Adjusting his intricate monocle with a shrewd glint in his eye, the merchant smoothly steps in to offer a highly beneficial proposal. Sensing a massive business opportunity, Jack confidently offers to purchase the entire mountain of slaughtered monsters right on the spot. Puffing out his chest, the merchant proudly explains that since his main trade is food, moving bulk demon boar meat will be an absolute breeze. Surprised by the generous offer, Hiro cautiously asks how the merchant plans to handle all the completely inedible disaster-class monsters. Flashing a razor-sharp, confident smile, the seasoned merchant assures him that the dangerous beasts are absolutely not an issue. He eagerly details how a minotaur's sturdy horns make top-tier armor, while a Medusa's cursed eye is an incredibly rare and valuable magical catalyst. Gesturing wildly, Jack excitedly explains that ultra-rare dragon parts fetch such astronomical prices that he will have to securely sell them at a high-end auction. Raising a single finger, the pragmatic merchant clarifies that he will have to strictly deduct the hefty dismantling and handling fees from their final payout. Sweating nervously and scratching his head, Jack awkwardly admits that he simply does not have enough raw cash on hand to buy the massive mountain of materials up front. Instantly losing her temper, an enraged Amelia aggressively steps forward and accuses the penniless merchant of trying to run a scam. Waving his hands in absolute panic, Jack frantically defends himself, clarifying that no normal traveling merchant carries enough gold to outright buy disaster-class materials on a whim. Recovering his professional composure, Jack suggests forging a formal, binding contract to ensure everyone gets paid fairly and safely. Pulling out an intricate document adorned with glowing magical circles, Jack reveals the official promissory note used exclusively for high-level territorial trade. Detailing the lucrative terms, the merchant promises to visit weekly for orders and properly deliver their massive payout by the end of the following month. Placing a respectful hand on his chest, Jack generously offers to personally cover the company's mandatory 5% guarantee fee. Immediately rejecting the special treatment, Hiro strictly insists that a business contract must remain completely fair so Jack does not end up at a financial disadvantage. Smiling warmly, the young lord reassures the stunned merchant that simply establishing a reliable trade route out in the dangerous wilderness is already a massive victory for their territory. Deeply moved by the boy's absolute integrity, Jack bows respectfully and apologizes for desperately trying to secure the deal through cheap financial favors. Regaining his strict business persona, Jack explains that formal noble contracts legally require either a wife or a direct heir to act as the official guarantor. Sweating slightly, the merchant awkwardly admits that the strict rule exists simply because wealthy nobles are notoriously irresponsible with their massive spending habits. Adjusting his monocle, Jack asks if someone could briefly act as Hiro's wife just to clear the formal paperwork. Turning back to the group, Hiro immediately asks a stunned Amelia if she would mind filling the role. Pointing frantically at herself, Amelia violently flinches as Jack reassures her that it is just a harmless technicality. Amelia breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing that even on paper, they will officially be listed as husband and wife. Smiling gently, Hero tilts his head and asks if she truly does not want to be the guarantor after all. Averting her gaze, Amelia softly admits she would instantly refuse if he were someone she disliked. Blushing a bright crimson, the flustered feline warrior demands that he at least say it properly like a real proposal. Hero stares earnestly into her flustered eyes and softly calls her name. Dropping gracefully to one knee, Hero extends his hand and formally begs Amelia to become his wife. Blushing furiously, Amelia bashfully accepts his proposal, only for a harsh voice to suddenly scream out in absolute rejection. The unseen intruder furiously berates Amelia, demanding to know if disgracing their family name inside the village was not enough. Glaring with intense hatred, the newcomer sneers that it is absolutely disgusting for a proud catfolk warrior to marry an invader. Gripping a large bough, a fierce new catfolk warrior issues a terrifying ultimatum for Amelia to return to the village immediately or face the consequences. Standing tall with her large bough, Amelia addresses the newcomer as Natasha and demands to know why she is here. Glaring coldly, Natasha tells her not to answer a question with a question and issues a grim ultimatum to either return to the village or die by her hands. Watching the tense exchange, Hero remembers Natasha as the person who taught him many things when he was a child. Sweating nervously, Amelia explains that Natasha is an elite reconnaissance specialist likely sent to track her down. Lowering her weapon slightly, Natasha clarifies that Amelia's departure was never the real issue, but rather the fact that humans exist on this land. Hero asks in confusion why humans are considered a problem, prompting Natasha to point out that the Rosewell family has inherited this territory for generations. She bitterly explains that this land was once a center for human-led demi-human hunting, proving that humans never bothered to learn its true history. Though she claims to have done nothing wrong, Natasha expresses deep disgust that one of their own would side with the humans they came to scout. Amelia steps forward to fiercely defend Hero, insisting he is different from past humans because he spent his entire fortune to save her from the brink of death. Natasha scoffs at the absurd claim, arguing that history proves humans wouldn't even offer water to starving demi-humans, let alone expensive medicine. Waving his hands frantically, Jack tries to de-escalate the situation by suggesting they sit down for tea since humans are no longer as cruel. Natasha shoots Jack an icy glare, immediately recognizing him as a traveling merchant and refusing to fall for his cheap tricks. Calling him a filthy slave trader, she furiously threatens to feed him to her magic wolves while demanding to know what they secretly put in Amelia's medicine. Realizing the dire situation, Amelia connects the recent wolf sightings to Natasha as a sweating Hero notes they are heavily outnumbered. The massive ancient dragon steps up behind Hero, offering to instantly turn the hostile group to ash if given the order. Hero firmly rejects the violent option, knowing that escalating the conflict will completely ruin Amelia's standing with her people. Desperate for a peaceful solution, Hero frantically racks his brain to find a way out of the escalating crisis. He quickly realizes that begging for mercy won't work because they might simply demand his life instead. Clenching his fist in frustration, he admits that challenging the elite warrior to a duel would be suicide. Hero grimly recalls Marison's past warning that neither the wisdom nor the combat experience of his dragon heart can save him in this specific situation. A memory of his mentor urging him not to give up and survive in his own domain flashes through his mind. Gritting his teeth, Hero refuses to surrender and desperately searches for a way to turn the tide. He knows he needs to make a decisive, unpredictable move to completely flip the tactical situation. Gathering his resolve, Hero decides to take a massive risk because protecting Amelia is worth the unknown consequences. Staring at his glowing hand, he prepares to use the accumulated points Amelia gave him to trigger a miracle. As Natasha commands her snarling magic wolves to prepare for attack, Hero boldly activates the Book of Revelation. A blinding light erupts from the magical tome as he triggers a powerful divine lottery. An enormous, ethereal figure manifests behind Hero as he successfully summons the special rank Book of Senna, God of Abundance. Standing bravely in the clearing, Hero opens the ancient, glowing book to unleash its divine power. Staring at the resulting magic, Hero's eyes widen in absolute, horrified shock at what he just summoned. Instead of a combat ability, the revelation grants bags of beans and a purely agricultural blessing that triples crop growth speed. Utterly defeated by the terrible luck, Hero realizes this farming magic is useless and he lost the moment he chose to gamble. Unamused by the bizarre display, Natasha coldly asks if this pathetic trick is really his grand plan. Drawing her bowstring back, she demands he stop the strange behavior and angrily asks if he is trying to buy her off with beans. Throwing her arms wide, a brave Gol jumps in front of Hero and demands the intruder stop hurting her papa and mama. Natasha freezes in absolute confusion, staring at the tiny dragon girl and asking if she just referred to Amelia as her mother. Glaring fiercely, the toddler shouts a confident confirmation to protect her newfound family. Lowering her weapon in exasperation, Natasha mutters that this entire chaotic situation is incredibly pathetic. Sighing heavily, she admits she already knew Amelia was deeply struggling with the upcoming martial tournament. As Hero and Gol watch carefully, Natasha reveals she also knew Amelia desperately needed Artemis's bow to resolve her crisis. Natasha demands to know what Amelia truly needs, coldly accusing her of abandoning her sister to play house with humans. Drawing her bowstring back, the fierce warrior declares she will force Amelia to realize her grave mistake. Amelia desperately screams for Hero to dodge as Natasha unleashes a glowing, lethal arrow. Staring down the incoming projectile, Hero freezes as he realizes he cannot evade the attack. Hero quickly calculates that dodging would sacrifice Gol, and if Amelia shields him, her tribe's pride will be upheld, leaving him no choice but to take the hit. The deadly arrow rockets across the clearing directly toward its stationary target. Hero braces himself as the massive projectile hurtles straight toward his face at blinding speed. Anticipating his absolute end, Hero apologizes internally as the others watch in sheer horror. Suddenly, Smirnov appears out of nowhere and casually catches the lethal arrow barehanded right in front of Hero's face. Hero stares in absolute shock, exclaiming that he cannot believe the mercenary actually came back. Snapping the arrow in half, Smirnov scolds the young lord for valuing his own life too lightly and asks what would happen to his family if he died. Hero looks up in utter confusion, softly repeating the word "them" as he processes the unexpected statement. Smirnov steps aside to reveal a group of weary farmers and craftsmen, explaining he brought them because they firmly believed they could be of use to the territory. The mercenary explains that these people lost their farmland to heavy taxes and sought him out while he was returning from dropping off the rogue guild members. Looking incredibly somber, Smirnov admits that his strength alone is not enough to save them. He strictly warns Hero not to misunderstand the situation before them. Smirnov emphasizes that these citizens are not just begging for help, but genuinely believe they can contribute to building the domain. He fiercely declares that a territory is built by everyone who lives in it, warning Hero that trying to handle everything alone is a huge mistake. Staring with wide eyes, Hero realizes his fundamental flaw and admits that raw power was never what he lacked. Burning with a newfound lordly resolve, Hero loudly commands everyone to listen to him. Stepping forward with absolute confidence, Hero declares he will lead and orders everyone to follow his instructions exactly. Hero swiftly orders Smirnov to subdue the hostile War Katyr tribe women the moment he gives the signal. He then commands Amelia and the ancient dragon to prioritize guarding the vulnerable citizens. A panicked Gol is strictly ordered to stay completely hidden during the upcoming clash. Confirming everyone is ready, Hero aggressively commands his team to move out. Activating a powerful revelation card depicting wild beasts, Hero channels a massive wave of dominating energy. Leaning forward, Hero unleashes a devastating, booming command for the enemies to sit. Natasha is caught completely off guard as her massive magic wolves instantly cower and whimper under the overwhelming pressure. Recovering her focus, Natasha quickly assesses the situation and realizes Hero moves much faster than a standard heavyweight fighter. Aiming her bow with lethal precision, she prepares a rapid counterattack to end the fight. Calculating her strike, she decides to aim directly for the neck since dodging a second arrow is impossible. Before she can loose the string, Smirnov instantly appears beside her and threatens to take her heart in exchange. Pinning her completely, Smirnov effortlessly subdues the stunned warrior and mocks her for yielding her life so easily. Blushing deeply and entirely helpless in Smirnov's powerful grip, Natasha begrudgingly surrenders to her capture. Hero excitedly praises Smirnov for his incredible work, prompting the mercenary to warmly return the compliment. Surveying the battlefield, Hero sighs in deep relief noting that the subdued magic wolves appear completely uninjured. A thoroughly confused Smirnov asks what exactly the young lord just used to instantly tame the ferocious beasts. Hero explains he used the roar of the Beast King, a revelation meant for peaceful negotiations that he forcefully weaponized into an absolute command. The ancient dragon and Gol lay utterly flattened against the grass, proving Hiro's command was so powerful it inadvertently forced dragons to submit as well. Shifting his attention back to his feline companion, Hiro softly calls her name. Amelia stands quietly in the clearing as Hiro announces he has one final thing to ask. Still held captive, Natasha interjects to angrily demand why Amelia defends the humans so fiercely when she knows the bloody history between their races. Amelia admits she initially felt the same hatred, but clearly remembers how Hiro looked her in the eyes and asked if it was truly wrong to save a dying person. Placing a hand over her heart, Amelia proudly declares that the Warcatir tribe always honors its traditions and repays its debts. Natasha lowers her head in total defeat and admits she was the shameless one, prompting Hiro to calmly approach his prisoner. Hiro informs the captive that he has no plans to punish her, but politely asks for one single favor in return for her absolute freedom. Looking directly at Natasha, Hiro respectfully asks her to guide their entire group straight to the Warcatir tribe's village. Sweating nervously, Natasha suspiciously asks what the young human lord plans to do once they arrive in hostile territory. Hiro confidently declares that since Amelia is returning for the martial tournament anyway, it makes perfect sense for his entire faction to accompany her. Setting their sights on the distant village, the unified group prepares to march forward to confront the upcoming martial tournament together. The chapter opens with the ominous title, Depths of the Demon Forest. Trudging through the dense woods, a hooded hero wipes his sweat as his catgirl companion encourages him that the village is just ahead. Following behind, a tall figure groans under the weight of a small girl on his shoulders, complaining that flying would be much faster than walking. He boasts that subduing a simple village from the air would be effortless if he didn't have to carry them on his back. Suddenly, a firm hand grabs him as he is strictly reprimanded that an aerial assault is absolutely not allowed. They are firmly reminded that their goal is peaceful, intending to greet the villagers simply as neighbors. Walking alongside them, a muscular man notes the existing tension between humans and demi-humans, warning that even a small mistake could spark a war. Hiro threatens the ancient dragon that starting a war will result in a lifetime ban from eating meals. As the group continues their trek, the muscular man questions Hiro on whether their current small force is truly enough for safety. Two catgirls express their deep concern, noting that the local tribe's hostility toward humans is intensely dangerous for Natasha and Amelia. They worryingly ask if it would have been safer to mobilize their entire force for this diplomatic mission. Hiro dismisses the idea immediately, explaining that mobilizing everyone wouldn't work since they all have important jobs to do back home. Looking down the winding path, he states they will be gone for 14 days and has left Jack in charge of the materials and tools. Furthermore, he points out that they cannot leave their territory unattended while craftsmen are busy building houses and repairing the mansion. Meanwhile, farmers are actively developing the land with blessed seeds, and even the underlings are pitching in by dismantling monsters. Acknowledging their busy schedule, they realize they have already asked a lot of their people back home. Refocusing on their current mission, Hiro emphasizes that their important work here is to improve relations with the Warcat tribe. He reasons that the demon forest isn't fertile enough to sustain them, making trade with the village essential to enrich all their lives. Filled with determination, Hiro declares his goal to win the upcoming martial arts tournament and become a bridge between the forest and the village. One of the catgirls anxiously admits that she left the village on her own terms, casting doubt on whether they will even allow her to participate. She nervously adds that while a simple moving in greeting might be fine, the rest of their plan might face heavy resistance. Fearing the worst, she warns the group that things definitely won't go as smoothly as Hiro hopes. She explains that her clan strictly worships strength, noting it will be obvious what happens if they foolishly try to resist Hiro's immense power. The muscular man grimly questions if the clan truly understands the difference, warning that some hotheads might still risk their lives charging in. Unveiling a large object, the catgirl reveals they have a secret weapon from Smirnov-san ready to be used if negotiations fail. Staring at the ominous bundle, a sweating Hiro mutters that he really hopes they can just settle things peacefully. They arrive before a massive, sunlit corridor formed by towering trees, marking the grand entrance to the Warcat village. Staring up in sheer awe, the muscular man remarks that the entrance is massive and perfectly resembles a fortress created by nature itself. Suddenly, a sharp voice cuts through the air, declaring that the fortress is designed to keep lowly beings from trampling on their sanctuary. The fierce Warcat chief appears with her armed guards, issuing a single lethal warning that stepping any closer will cost them their lives. Bravely stepping forward toward the hostile line, Hiro apologizes for the sudden visit and politely introduces himself as a new resident of the demon forest. Maintaining a gentle smile, he explains that he simply came to offer a moving-in greeting in hopes they can talk things out. Unmoved by his politeness, the furious chief glares down at him and commands them to leave at once. Refusing to back down, Hiro takes a step forward and begs them to just hear him out despite their hatred for humans. Hiro's eyes widen in shock as his companion screams for him to step back, realizing the chief's deadly warning wasn't a bluff. Leaping into the line of fire with her own bow fully drawn, Hiro's catgirl companion desperately yells for the chief to stop. With unshakable resolve, she declares that Hiro is her life-saving benefactor and swears she won't forgive anyone who tries to harm him. The chief scoffs at the fierce display, mockingly asking if she actually expects to hit a target from that distance with her notoriously poor eyesight. Unleashing her secret weapon, the girl reveals a mystical bow adorned with an eye emblem and confidently states that this weapon makes the impossible shot a reality. The chief's arrogant sneer instantly morphs into absolute terror as she recognizes the glowing artifact as their tribe's legendary divine weapon. Drawing the bow of Artemis, the catgirl aims the glowing divine weapon against the backdrop of a crescent moon. Unfazed by the legendary weapon, the chief glares at the humans and demands to know what they are planning by coaxing Amelia. Frustrated by the stubbornness, the little girl perched on her companion's shoulders yells that they have been trying to talk this entire time. The chief merely smirks at the young girl's outburst, mockingly noting how high and mighty she acts for someone so small. Giving a sinister grin, the horned dragon man retorts by asking if beastkin possess bad hearing alongside their bad heads. Refusing to be insulted, the fierce chief snaps back that they don't have heads low enough to bow to scum like them. Desperately trying to de-escalate the tension, Hiro steps forward with his hand raised, pleading for everyone to calm down. Ignoring his peaceful plea, the chief shouts a final warning as a massive barrage of arrows rains down from the sky toward the group. The deadly volley strikes the earth all around them, burying deeply into the dirt in a terrifying display of force. Narrowing his draconic eyes, the horned man scoffs at the pathetic attempt, muttering that such an attack is useless against him. With a sudden, explosive burst of wind, the incoming arrows are instantly deflected and sent flying in all directions. Shielding her face from the violent gale, a shocked chief stammers and wonders if their enemy just used advanced magic. A massive pair of white wings unfurls as the man casually reveals that he merely flapped one wing. Transforming completely, he takes the form of a colossal silver ancient dragon with the little girl riding fiercely on his head. The Warcat warriors are left utterly paralyzed in disbelief, stunned that legendary dragon kind would ever side with mere humans. Roaring that they will regret striking first, the little girl orders the dragon to attack as it charges up a blinding blast of energy in its maw. Before the devastating beam can fire, Hiro casually smacks the giant beast on the snout, immediately shutting down the attack. As the dragon sweats nervously and the girl protests that they were attacked first, Hiro firmly scolds them by pointing out that both sides had drawn their bows. Trembling with a mix of awe and terror, the chief stares at Hiro, wondering who this boy is to so effortlessly command a dragon. Seizing the momentary silence, Hiro steps out from the dust and walks confidently toward the hostile Warcat forces. Kneeling humbly before the astonished warriors, he formally apologizes for his companion's rudeness as the representative of his domain. Looking up with sincere eyes, he respectfully asks the chief to forgive their lack of manners since they are still young. Disarmed by his incredible humility, the chief politely addresses him as a mighty one and asks him to raise his head. Introducing herself as Emeralda, she thanks him for showing restraint and admits that their tribe deeply respects true strength. Recognizing that he is entirely different from other humans, Emeralda lowers her guard and asks Hiro to state his actual purpose for visiting. With a friendly smile, Hiro replies that it's nothing major, explaining he simply wanted to offer a neighborly greeting for moving into the forest. He then glances at Amelia, adding that he heard she is entering the martial arts tournament and wanted to personally witness her prowess. Emeralda looks completely bewildered by the statement, repeating the mention of the martial arts tournament in disbelief. She quickly scoffs at the idea, dismissing Amelia as a mere dropout who cowardly abandoned their village. Before the argument can escalate, Hiro and his friends look up in absolute awe at the towering canopy of the forest. Sighing heavily, Emeralda admits there are complicated circumstances regarding Amelia and decides it isn't right to discuss them standing out in the open. Turning her back, she formally invites the group to follow her to the mansion so they can discuss the details properly. A majestic, ancient tree looms over the landscape, known as a sacred vessel for a god and the origin of the divine bow of Artemis. Flocks of birds soar over the vast, beautiful wilderness that Emeralda's ancestors were fiercely entrusted to protect. As they approach the end of the natural corridor, Emeralda warns Hiro that the village ahead might be a bit noisy. Stepping out of the trees, Hiro and his companions are left speechless by the incredible sight of the hidden settlement. Intricately crafted wooden houses are built seamlessly into the colossal trunks and branches of the ancient forest. The rustic architecture stretches high up into the canopy, perfectly blending civilization with the raw beauty of nature. Observing from a nearby balcony, a pair of elven residents note how incredibly rare it is for a human to be invited inside. Gazing up in sheer awe, the group marvels at the incredible sight of wooden houses seamlessly growing right out of the massive trees. Spotting a group of wary children watching them from the shadows, Hiro wonders aloud if they are frightened by the sudden appearance of humans. The young beastkin stare with hungry, nervous eyes, leaving the group unsure if the stray kids are begging for food or plotting an ambush. Tensing his muscles, the muscular man warns Hiro to stay on guard and be ready to run at a moment's notice. Suddenly, a massive crowd of excited warcat women swarms the group, completely surrounding them in an overwhelming rush. Trapped in a chaotic crush of admirers, Hiro and his muscular companion panic as the women eagerly marvel at their incredible strength and rare human features. Sweating nervously under the intense attention, the muscular man grumbles that they are way more popular than he ever expected. A bold catgirl leans in close to a flustered Hiro, seductively asking the young man if he already has a mate. Meanwhile, another brazen woman presses herself against the muscular warrior, aggressively offering herself to him for the night. The chaotic flirting is instantly shattered when a booming voice demands absolute silence. Striding forward with furious authority, Emeralda orders everyone to step back immediately, declaring that disrespectful behavior toward the chieftain's guests will not be tolerated. As the crowd disperses, Hiro nervously checks on his muscular friend, who forcefully insists that he isn't angry despite his heavily twitching brow. Sighing in exasperation, Emeralda apologizes for her villagers' lack of restraint, explaining that their tribe is simply highly sensitive and drawn to raw strength. Blushing slightly, Hiro admits that while he was initially startled, it was actually a pleasant surprise since he fully expected to be attacked upon entering. Refocusing on their mission, Emeralda urges them to hurry to the mansion, warning that getting surrounded again would be highly troublesome. Crossing the threshold into the grand estate, the warcat chief formally thanks the group for taking the trouble to travel all this way. She leads them into a spacious, traditional room reserved for her personal matters and invites the guests to sit comfortably. Looking around in breathless wonder, Hiro admits he is completely overwhelmed by the amazing architecture of the private chamber. Taking her seat with a piercing gaze, Emeralda immediately cuts to the chase, boldly stating she doesn't believe they came solely to offer greetings and watch a tournament. Meeting her intense stare without flinching, Hiro bluntly confirms her suspicions and admits they actually have two distinct goals. He confidently declares that their first primary objective is to establish a formal trade agreement with the warcat tribe. Narrowing her eyes in curiosity, Emeralda asks whether his domain is looking to acquire specific goods or if they have items they wish to sell. Hiro honestly admits that they want to do both, prompting the chief to question if he truly understands the desolate state of her territory. She grimly recounts their dark history, describing a cursed land ravaged by brutal beastman hunts where lethal poisons and devastating magic were widely used. Packs of vicious monsters now roam the blood-stained soil, while the lingering magical corruption makes it nearly impossible to cultivate the earth for farming. Staring down the young lord, Emeralda demands to know how he expects to conduct trade in a harsh wasteland, prompting Hiro to unveil a glowing artifact. A magnificent, divine card materialized from the heavens hovers in the air, displaying an overwhelming list of magical boons, powerful enchantments, and rare resources. Emeralda's eyes widen in absolute disbelief, instantly recognizing the miraculous manifestations as genuine, legendary revelations granted directly by the gods. Despite her awe at the divine power, the pragmatic chief silently calculates that almost none of these incredible abilities directly benefit her immediate needs. Regaining her composure, she acknowledges that such overwhelming power must make him a highly valued and respected figure within human society. Smiling bitterly, Hiro reveals he was born into the prestigious Rothwell house but was tragically banished and replaced by his younger brother precisely because of this terrifying power. Leaning forward intensely, Emeralda asks the exiled noble what his true ambitions are in this unforgiving land, questioning if he seeks violent revenge or total conquest. With a gentle but unyielding resolve, Hiro firmly rejects violence, declaring his ultimate dream is to create a peaceful sanctuary where no one has to fight or go hungry. Stunned by his pure ideals, Emeralda admits she shares that same beautiful dream but warns him that surviving in his corrupted territory will be a brutal struggle. Hiro calmly agrees that the demon forest is an incredibly tough environment for humans to endure without external support. He explains that while Amelia and the dragons can currently hunt enough to sustain their small group, they will inevitably face catastrophic shortages once more residents arrive. Leaning forward earnestly, Hiro explains that this looming crisis is exactly why they desperately need to connect with the forest-dwelling warcat tribe. Nodding in profound understanding, Emeralda accepts his first goal and sharply asks him to reveal his mysterious second objective. Without a trace of hesitation, Hiro looks her dead in the eye and declares his intention to rescue Amelia's younger sister. Fueled by righteous determination, he explains Amelia told him everything, and he refuses to let the young girl be forcibly enslaved by a brutal warlord if she loses the tournament. Gritting her teeth, the chief glares at the ground and mutters that Amelia was an absolute fool for fleeing the village over such a matter. Raising her voice in raw frustration, she furiously demands to know why the young girl didn't just consult with the tribe's elders. Trembling under the intense scrutiny, Amelia bitterly replies that no one would have ever listened to a lowly village dropout anyway. She desperately tries to explain her actions, revealing that her younger sister Amira was tragically exiled as a direct result. Amelia's eyes widen in absolute horror as she processes the devastating news, turning her shocked gaze toward the chief. Maintaining a stern and unyielding expression, Emeralda coldly confirms that both sisters have been officially exiled from the village. Stepping forward to defend his companion, Hiro immediately protests that simply leaving without permission shouldn't warrant such an extreme punishment. The chief sternly cuts him off, explaining that this sacred rule has been passed down for generations to protect the divine tree and their clan from repeating past tragedies. She elaborates that traitors often join outlaw guilds, making it highly suspicious if a member from the weakest family suddenly disappeared. Glaring sharply at the young warcat, the chief scolds Amelia for recklessly ignoring the immense danger her actions could bring to her beloved family. Tears well up in Amelia's panicked eyes as she realizes the horrifying implications and begs to know if Amira is safe. A heavy silence falls over the room as a cloaked figure quietly steps out from the shadows behind the chief. Amelia gasps in absolute disbelief as her little sister Amira emerges safely from the shadows and hesitantly calls out to her. The two sisters violently crash into a desperate embrace, sobbing with overwhelming relief that they are finally reunited. Holding her sister tightly, Amelia looks up in sheer confusion to ask why she is still here, prompting the chief to reveal she personally protected the young girl. The chief solemnly explains that Amira was unjustly accused of fleeing before the tournament and forcibly taken into servitude as their family was stripped of all status. Processing the grim reality, Hiro steps in and demands to know what Amelia and the other outcasts are supposed to do now to survive. Suddenly bowing her head in a stunning display of humility, the fierce chief asks Hiro if he would graciously consider taking both sisters into his domain. Gritting her teeth against her own pride, she begs him to bend his rules just this once despite knowing it is an incredibly unreasonable request. Smiling warmly, Hiro gently asks her to raise her head and declares he would be more than happy to welcome them, despite the potential friction with the anti-human faction. Narrowing his eyes with newfound determination, Hiro shifts the conversation and bluntly asks a critical question. He points out the impoverished children they saw living on the streets during their arrival, astutely noting that they must be in the exact same desperate situation as Amelia. The chief painfully admits that while she isn't turning a blind eye to the disaster, her strict position prevents her from helping the weak without sparking fierce resentment. She grimly reveals that the only options left for those abandoned children are to be sold as slave labor to other villages or perish and return to the soil. Crouching down to meet her eye to eye, Hiro boldly ties this tragedy back to his earlier trade proposal and asks if his domain can borrow those children. He passionately explains that his domain desperately needs labor to develop the land, promising to provide them with food, shelter, and a proper education. The chief stares at him in utter bewilderment, struggling to comprehend why a human noble would ever make such an incredibly generous offer. Hiro flashes a brilliant smile and logically reasons that helping the street children provides the perfect cover for Amelia and Amira to seamlessly integrate into his territory. Scratching the back of his head nervously, he adds that this arrangement would also allow the chief to legally visit the children as a relative. Deeply moved by his profound kindness and tactical brilliance, the chief praises his remarkable maturity with a look of genuine awe. The heartwarming moment is violently shattered as a furious elven envoy bursts into the room, furiously scolding Emeralda for proceeding without authorization. The imposing envoy of the elf tribe glares down at the group with absolute disdain, radiating an aura of overwhelming arrogance. Marching aggressively toward the chief, he arrogantly declares that he already submitted the paperwork to purchase the children and offers to buy Amira at any price. Emeralda fiercely rejects the disgusting proposal, shouting that she doesn't want his money and will never subject her people to such a horrific slave contract. The furious elf accuses her of shattering a 1,000-year friendship just to sign a contract with lowly humans, threatening to void all their previous labor agreements. Looming over the tense chief, he darkly threatens her by asking if she truly understands the devastating consequences this will bring upon her village once his chieftain finds out. Refusing to be intimidated, Emeralda stands tall and swears that her entire village will fight to the bitter end if the elves dare to declare war over this. Desperate to stop the escalating conflict, Hiro throws himself between the two furious leaders and loudly shouts that he has a peaceful proposal. Staring down the arrogant elves, he confidently declares that since they are in the Warcat village, they must respect the local custom where raw strength dictates everything. He boldly challenges the elves to settle the dispute through an official intertribal martial arts tournament to avoid a bloody and meaningless war. Turning to the chief, Hero proposes that the absolute victor of this grand tournament shall win the exclusive rights to negotiate the future of the children. Outraged by the human's sheer audacity, the elven envoy barks in anger and accuses Hero of insulting their overwhelming superiority. Roaring with reignited warrior pride, Emeralda enthusiastically accepts the challenge, declaring that backing down from a fight is the ultimate disgrace to her clan. Adding fuel to the fire, she raises the stakes by demanding that the ultimate winner be granted one absolute request from the defeated tribe. A towering female elf steps forward with a condescending smirk, declaring that she, Alexia, finds the terms acceptable and will personally represent her tribe. The tension skyrockets as everyone turns to the Warcat chief to see exactly who will step up to fight the formidable elven champion. Emeralda confidently announces that Amelia will be their champion, ignoring the whispered concerns about whether the young archer can survive a no-holds-barred combat tournament. Stepping firmly into the spotlight, Amelia boldly declares that she has absolutely no problem fighting because they possess far more than just divine weapons. Amira gasps in sudden realization, staring wide-eyed at her older sister as she prepares to unveil her secret trump card. Pushing up a pair of polished lenses, Amelia proudly reveals her new human-made glasses, an incredible artifact capable of completely altering one's destiny. With crystal-clear vision, she softly traces her sister's cheek and cries tears of joy upon finally seeing the tiny mole she inherited from their mother. Amira's face lights up with absolute shock and overwhelming happiness as she realizes her sister's crippling blindness has been completely cured. Staring out the window with absolute focus, Amelia confirms with unshakable confidence that her vision is now perfectly clear. Aiming her bow toward the distant horizon, she demonstrates her flawless accuracy, proving that the bow princess's arrows will never miss their mark again. With a thunderous snap of the bowstring, Amelia unleashes a devastating shot directly through the open window. The incredibly fast projectile streaks across the village and violently shatters its distant target with terrifying, pinpoint precision. Adjusting her glasses with a smug grin, she turns back to the astounded crowd and asks if they still have any doubts about her combat capabilities. Grinning fiercely at the flawless display of skill, Emeralda acknowledges the legendary return of their once-lost prodigy archer. With the combatants locked in, the chief loudly proclaims that this upcoming tournament will be a brutal, uncompromising battle for the absolute pride of their tribes. Looming over the defiant humans and beast men, the arrogant elven champion aggressively demands that they fight her with absolutely everything they have. Roaring with uncontainable battle lust, Emeralda officially announces that the intertribal martial arts tournament will commence in exactly 3 days. Standing before the excited crowd, Amira warmly thanks the gathered spectators for their patience and formally welcomes the honored guests. The camera pans across a massive stone gate as Amira's voice rings out, officially declaring the start of the tribal martial tournament. She enthusiastically explains that this grand event will be a fierce three-way battle between the tribes held in the massive outdoor coliseum. Gesturing to the combatants, she introduces the elf tribe as the seekers of ancient wisdom and her own Warcat tribe as the proud guardians of the sacred tree. The announcer proudly notes that the strongest warriors have assembled, highlighting the historic inclusion of humans who have been granted unprecedented entry to the village. First up is the Warcat tribe's mightiest fighter Garius, a fierce warrior renowned for his unyielding strength and lethal ability to pierce targets from extreme distances. Next is the arrogant elven champion Alexia, an unparalleled magic archer whose finely honed arrows can effortlessly pierce even a spider's thread. Finally, Amelia is introduced as the fallen prodigy, a former village dropout who was miraculously saved by humans and has now returned to prove herself. The three imposing champions face off in the sunlit arena as the announcer passionately declares that the ultimate fate of their tribes rests squarely upon their shoulders. Stepping onto the battlefield, Amelia is immediately met with brutal hostility as the crowd viciously screams for the traitor to go down and stop bowing to human masters. Sweating nervously in the spectator stands, Hero and his muscular companion wince at the overwhelming hatred, noting the harsh contrast from their previously peaceful welcome. Furious at the disrespect, the little dragon girl violently vows absolute annihilation against anyone who hurts Amelia, forcing the ancient dragon Gol to desperately calm her down. Completely tuning out the vicious jeers, Amelia gently touches her lenses and finds confidence in the miraculous artifact Hero gifted her. Gripping the magnificent Artemis bow, she readies the divine weapon that Smirnov successfully recovered for her. Her newly restored eyes sparkle with unshakable resolve as she remembers the heartwarming cheers of her friends. Standing tall and proud with her legendary weapon in hand, the beastkin archer declares with absolute certainty that she will win this fight. Shifting focus, a pair of tribal officials formally announce that this martial tournament is entirely made possible through the magical artifacts provided by the elf tribe. They explain that a massive protective barrier will be erected over the entire battlefield to ensure the safety of all spectators from stray magical attacks. To give everyone a perfect view, the brutal combat inside the dome will be magically projected high up into the open sky. While the combat rules allow for the completely unrestricted use of divine revelations and deadly weapons, outright fatalities are strictly forbidden. A stitched voodoo doll is shown as the officials explain that any physical damage taken inside the barrier will automatically be transferred to a proxy instead of the fighter's real body. The magical proxy perfectly replicates all injuries, meaning that if a limb is destroyed, the corresponding fighter will instantly lose all movement in that area. Sustaining a critical amount of damage will immediately force the warrior into unconsciousness, resulting in an automatic and undeniable defeat. As a final warning, the elven official states that attacking a defeated opponent is a severe foul that will be instantly punished by a devastating lightning spell. With the complex rules finally established, the three elite champions take their starting positions amidst the overgrown ruins of the battlefield. Turning toward the VIP balcony, the announcer respectfully asks the fierce warcat chieftain to officially signal the start of the bloodshed. Gazing down with a heavy heart, Emeralda solemnly acknowledges that this single battle will ultimately decide the true ruler of their entire land. Raising her hand with absolute authority, she officially commences the tribal martial tournament and demands a fight worthy of these incredible stakes. With a ferocious roar that echoes across the stadium, the chieftain violently throws her hand down and screams for the battle to begin. Instantly springing into action, Amelia desperately dives behind a massive boulder to secure a temporary tactical advantage. Peeking out from cover, she frantically analyzes the situation and realizes that Garius's divine revelation grants him absolute magical concealment. Furthermore, she notes that the arrogant elven champion Alexia utilizes devastating homing magical arrows. Crouching low to the ground, Amelia decides to carefully observe the battlefield, painfully aware that she is at a massive disadvantage in terms of raw range. Suddenly, a massive shadow looms over her hiding spot as a muscular leg silently steps right behind the terrified archer. Amelia's blood runs completely cold as she looks up and realizes the fully concealed Garius is already standing right over her. With a savage sneer, the massive beastman readies a brutal punch as a panicked Amelia violently throws herself backward to escape the lethal ambush. A devastatingly brutal strike connects directly with her chest, generating a massive shockwave that violently launches her into the air. Watching helplessly from the spectator stands, a horrified hero screams her name as her stitched magical proxy violently absorbs the impact. Capitalizing on the brutal opening strike, Garius sends the young archer skidding violently across the dirt just seconds into the match. Digging her heels into the earth to stop her momentum, a battered Amelia grits her teeth and realizes that without Hero's divine blessing, that single ambush would have instantly ended her life. Watching the match unfold, Hero's companion questions the archer's reckless strategy while the muscular man points out that a long-range fighter charging in for a direct hit is actually a brilliantly unexpected move. Narrowing her eyes in deep concentration, Amelia senses something is terribly wrong and shivers with a really bad feeling. She realizes her opponent actually believes she is weak enough to be taken down without stealth since he is charging straight into her line of sight. Dropping into a defensive stance, the young beastkin archer draws her bow back and vows to return fire without a single moment of hesitation. Analyzing the rushing beastman's immense speed, she calculates that Garius will easily evade her initial projectile. Preparing a lethal combo, Amelia prepares to force his dodge specifically so she can strike him with a devastating follow-up attack. To her absolute shock, the massive beastman charges relentlessly forward without even attempting to avoid her line of sight. Gritting her teeth against the overwhelming pressure, she unleashes her arrow and screams for him to take her full power. With terrifying casualness, Garius violently deflects the high-speed projectile using nothing but his reinforced forearm. Sweating under the intense assault, Amelia panics as the massive warrior easily swats away her arrows and rapidly closes the distance. Desperately needing to regroup, the young archer launches herself into a high aerial maneuver while questioning his dangerously reckless approach. Her blood turns to ice as she looks over her shoulder to find Garius leaping through the air right behind her. A devastating punch sends Amelia crashing into the earth, leaving her stunned by a monstrous strength that completely surpasses normal beastman capabilities. Looming over her battered body, a heavily panting Garius whispers her name and shockingly begs her to take him down. Staring up through cracked lenses, Amelia gasps in horror as she realizes the mighty warrior is actually losing consciousness on his feet. A flashback reveals that the treacherous elves spiked the beastman's drink before the match, leaving Garius violently battling the debilitating effects of poison. Trembling from the poison, Garius demands that she use her divine bow to pierce his heart so he can at least fall to a fellow beastkin. Crashing down on top of her, he tragically embraces the clan's code of choosing death over defeat, leaving Amelia utterly heartbroken by his desperate plea. Gently resting her hand on his broad back, she solemnly accepts his dying warrior's wish. Drawing a fresh arrow from her quiver, the young archer honors his resolve as a fellow warrior of their proud tribe. With a fierce battle cry, she violently kicks the massive beastman high into the air and vows to fight him with absolutely everything she has. Tracking his airborne body, she coldly calculates that a simple, straightforward attack won't be enough to finish the job. She realizes that even a single, overwhelmingly powerful shot from her divine weapon might not be enough to secure his defeat. Tapping into the divine blessing hero bestowed upon her, the former dropout proudly declares she finally has a surefire way to win. Seizing the incredibly brief window of opportunity, Amelia locks onto her target and prepares to unleash her ultimate technique. Moving with blinding divine lightning speed, she rapidly draws and fires a massive barrage of arrows in a fraction of a second. The magical lenses flare with intense energy as her newly restored eyes perfectly track the trajectory of every single projectile. She screams out the name of her rapid multi-shot technique as a relentless storm of arrows streaks toward the helpless airborne target. Suspended mid-air, the paralyzed Beastman champion widens his eyes in sheer awe at the unstoppable magical barrage. Smiling softly in the face of his inevitable defeat, Darius mutters his absolute disbelief that she actually pulled off such a legendary maneuver. The devastating volley violently obliterates the stitched proxy doll, instantly transferring the massive critical damage to the fighter. The crowd erupts into absolute chaos as the announcer screams that the fallen dropout has miraculously defeated their tribe's mightiest warrior. Dropping to her knees, Amelia gasps for air and realizes that despite the proxy preventing fatal injuries, she still feels immense physical exhaustion. Activating her danger detection skill to scan the perimeter, she gazes down at her unconscious comrade and whispers an apology for his suffering. Before she can even catch her breath, a lethal magical arrow suddenly pierces violently through her shoulder from out of nowhere. Stepping out from the shadows with a wicked smirk, the elven champion Alexia mockingly apologizes for interrupting the touching moment. Standing tall after the ambush, Amelia realizes she successfully dodged Alexia's surprise attack thanks to the War Katyr tribe's revelation. Sweating from the close call, Amelia acknowledges her luck but realizes losing her magic glasses is as good as a fatal blow. Glaring across the cratered battlefield, Amelia demands to know exactly what the elven champion is plotting. She grimly suspects foul play, remembering how the mighty Darius claimed the elves had disgracefully drugged him before the match. With a smug smirk, Alexia casually pulls out a small vial and asks if that is the trickery she is referring to. The arrogant elf explains she crafted a berserker's potion that frees the body from pain and grants limitless strength at the cost of total self-control. Frowning slightly at her own handiwork, Alexia admits her formula still needs improvement since Darius somehow dispelled the side effects. Furious at the despicable tactic, Amelia angrily demands to know if she is seriously willing to use poison just to win a tournament. Unfazed by the accusation, Alexia gives a condescending smile and suggests Amelia direct her complaints to Darius instead. Standing over the fallen beastman, Alexia cruelly reveals that the mighty warrior was so desperate to win he actually begged her for the potion. Holding up a different vial, the elf explains she usually supplied him with a separate drug that drastically enhanced his physical abilities. Utterly disgusted by the revelation, Amelia questions what the elven champion's true goal actually is. Dropping her arrogant facade, Alexia reveals she originally worked in education and was assigned to this village to teach magic. She grimly explains that in this brutal village, children who lack combat ability or lose their parents are completely abandoned. Disgusted by their culture, she notes that hundreds of beastkin children are cast aside to waste away in alleyways because of their barbaric belief in absolute strength. The elven champion passionately reveals she tried to change their society with countless reform proposals but was completely ignored. Refusing to give up, she abandoned teaching to become an envoy and secretly sent the abandoned children to the elven forest for refuge under the guise of slavery. Staring at her with mixed emotions, Amelia asks if Alexia knows what those rescued children actually call her. The young beastkin painfully reveals that the children now know her as the devil's slave merchant. Clenching her fists, Alexia admits her heart reached its absolute limit after endlessly witnessing their screams as she tore siblings and friends apart. Lowering her gaze, she explains that in her darkest moment, Darius came to her with a desperate proposal. The massive beastman had promised that if he became the strongest warrior in the village, he could change their brutal ways using the power of her magic potions. Bitterly recalling the past, Alexia admits she gave him the drugs but he ultimately drowned in power and changed absolutely nothing. Summoning a massive volley of magical arrows, Alexia declares that if someone truly wants to change the world, relying on others is useless. Glaring with unshakable resolve, the elven champion vows she will seize a better future with her own two hands. Unleashing her magical fury, Alexia violently casts a devastating spell called the Thunderbolt Arrow Prison. The crowd watches in horror as the announcer screams that the barrier cannot suppress the devastating magic and begs Amelia to surrender. Enduring the agonizing shock, Amelia frantically wonders how she is taking actual physical damage when the proxy is supposed to absorb everything. Refusing to yield to the pain, the young archer rapidly draws her bow and launches a desperate counterattack. Effortlessly deflecting the shot with a wind shield, Alexia mocks the beastkin for thinking she wouldn't anticipate such a basic attack. Staring down the explosion of her failed attack, Amelia realizes exactly what she needs to do to break through. Gripping her divine weapon tightly, the young archer vows to go far beyond the elven champion's arrogant expectations. Calculating the distance, Alexia realizes a simple defensive spell won't be enough and decides one strike from her revelation will end the match. Praising the beastkin's impressive physical abilities, Alexia readies her final blow and smirks that her efforts are ultimately useless. The stadium erupts as Alexia unleashes her devastating arrow tornado, violently turning Amelia's own momentum against her for a critical hit. Watching nervously from the stands, the muscular warrior sweats and notes that Alexia's magic flawlessly combines absolute offense and defense. Hugging the elven maid in terror, the little dragon girl tearfully asks if Amelia is actually going to lose the brutal match. Reassuring the panicked child, Hero confidently states that she doesn't need to worry because Amelia possesses magic words that make her stronger. Leaning in close, Hero playfully whispers the secret words into the little girl's ear and instructs her to shout them as loudly as possible. Throwing their hands in the air, Hero and the little dragon girl scream at the top of their lungs, cheering for Amelia to do her best and win the fight. Battered and coughing blood, Amelia struggles to rise from the crater while fiercely vowing that she will not lose just yet. Looming over the devastating impact zone, Alexia mockingly questions if the beastkin truly believes she can keep fighting without any options left. Gripping her ruined divine weapon, Amelia realizes in horror that the revelation has completely shattered all of the bow's magical gems. Desperate to regroup, she tells herself to stay calm and forcefully bounds away to put distance between her and the elven champion. Giving her no quarter, Alexia instantly unleashes a devastating shockwave blast to crush the retreating archer. Squinting through the dust, Amelia panics as she realizes her vision is dangerously blurred at this range without her glasses. Refusing to go down without a fight, she unleashes a desperate scatter shot to buy herself some precious time. Searching her memories for a solution, she desperately tries to recall Hero's past lessons on how to craft glasses with her own magic. A flashback reveals a frustrated Amelia standing next to Hero as her newly crafted ice glasses completely melt away in her hands. Examining the dripping frames, she complains that while the magical glasses are incredibly useful, their short lifespan makes them far too tricky to rely on. Smiling patiently, Hero encourages her to keep trying, explaining that crafting them is just a simple application of daily ice magic. He begins a complex lecture on optics, explaining how carving convex and concave lenses out of transparent ice can magnify or shrink targets. Overwhelmed by the complex scientific theory, a bewildered Amelia completely fails to grasp the concept of light refraction. Changing his approach, Hero instructs her to form a simple tube with her hands and look through it, leaving her amazed as her vision faintly clears up. He explains the basic mechanism of a telescope, noting that attaching lenses to both ends of a long tube creates a powerful tool for seeing immense distances. Snapping back to the brutal reality of the tournament, Amelia grips a shard of ice and declares she has only one move left to win. Channeling her magic with absolute focus, she begins crafting a custom ice artifact by attaching rounded lenses to both sides. Thinning the ice and extending the tube bit by bit, she meticulously adjusts the focal length until her distant target comes into crystal clear view. Watching from the spectator stands, Hero gasps in absolute shock as he recognizes the familiar shape of the icy construct. He stares in sheer disbelief, realizing his student just flawlessly crafted a magical sniper's lens in the middle of a deathmatch. Frustrated by the beastkin's stubbornness, Alexia arrogantly declares she will shoot her down and notes how pathetic it is for an archer to block one of her hands with a useless tube. Radiating overwhelming magical power, the elven champion draws her bow and summons a terrifying, sky-filling barrage of lightning-infused arrows. Refusing to let her occupied hand be a weakness, Amelia hooks the bowstring with her foot and prepares a desperate counterstance. Falling backwards into a flawless acrobatic draw, she uses the immense strength of her legs to pull the bowstring back to its absolute limit. With a thunderous snap, she violently launches a super heavy-class arrow straight toward the overwhelming magical storm. Screaming with arrogant fury, Alexia unleashes her maximum power lightning arrow to obliterate the beastkin once and for all. The two devastating attacks violently collide in mid-air, creating a blinding explosion of kinetic force and shattered magical energy. Alexia's eyes widen in absolute terror as she watches an impossible sight unfold within the chaotic blast radius. Shattering the elven champion's reality, Amelia's single, perfectly aimed arrow violently pierces straight through the center of the defensive magic. The massive volley of elven arrows scatters harmlessly into the dirt as Amelia lands gracefully from her legendary shot. Struck by the decisive blow, a stunned Alexia collapses to her knees, utterly unable to comprehend being defeated by a supposed failure. The stadium erupts into deafening cheers as the announcer screams that the weakest outcast has miraculously secured victory for humanity. Trembling with exhaustion, Amelia clutches her melting sniper lens and whispers Hero's name in sheer disbelief at her own impossible achievement. Tears of overwhelming joy stream down her bruised face as the victorious Bao princess finally reclaims her stolen pride. Sitting at the victory feast, a young beastkin eagerly digs into her meal and marvels at the incredibly delicious food. A cheerful maid offers her another dish to try while the cat girl marvels that even slime can taste this good. Blushing with absolute delight, the cat girl devours the fried potatoes and emphatically declares they are far too tasty. Smiling warmly at the energetic guests, the maid happily notes that she is glad the food suits their palates. She cheerfully encourages everyone to eat plenty since they are gathered to celebrate a grand victory feast. Glancing over at their young lord, the maid praises Goel's father for being a truly incredible leader. Blushing under the sudden praise, Hero awkwardly rubs his head as the girls gush over his formidable military strength and vast culinary knowledge. The Beastkin sisters look at him with pure admiration, declaring that Hero can do absolutely anything and thanking him for saving Amira. Overflowing with gratitude, the young cat girls emphasize once again that they owe their sister's rescue entirely to his boundless capabilities. Deflecting the praise, Hero gently reminds them that Amelia worked just as hard for the village and can finally return home. Amelia freezes in sudden confusion, looking back at Hero and wondering what he actually means by that statement. Flashing back to a tense confrontation, a stern voice sharply calls out to Alexia and confirms her grim reality. Without a shred of mercy, the tribal leadership officially declares that she has been permanently expelled from the clan. Trapped behind heavy iron bars, a disgraced Garius is sentenced to the exact same exile for bringing shame upon their lineage. Tossing a scroll to the kneeling elf, a commanding catwoman orders Alexia to carefully read the details of her banishment. Gripping the scroll in a panic, a frantic Alexia immediately demands to know what will happen to the abandoned kittens she tried to save. The stoic leader coldly dismisses her concern, stating that an existing pact with Hero has already settled the matter. Stepping forward into the tense clearing, a determined Hero interrupts the judgment to offer a sudden proposal. Gesturing gently toward the exiles, he asks the chief if it would be alright for him to invite Alexia and Garius to his territory. Taken completely off guard, the chief questions his actual intentions for the exiles while a terrified Alexia assumes the absolute worst. Blushing fiercely and crossing her arms, the disgraced elven champion loudly accuses Hero of plotting to make her his captive. Furious at the blatant disrespect, the Beastkin sisters aggressively yell at the elf not to lump their noble father in with vulgar slavers. Squinting in confusion, Alexia demands to know his true plans while Hero simply shrugs and mutters that he might not have any. Standing tall beside him, a muscular warrior scoffs at his lord's soft heart and warns that simply prioritizing others won't be enough this time. A massive wave of magical energy washes over the leaders as they realize Hero's divine revelation activates upon mutual recognition of alliance. The lush, vibrant landscape stands as undeniable proof that the entire War Cat tribe has officially come under Hero's grand banner. Looking over their combined forces, the group realizes their army of dragons, sword saints, and beastkin warriors could now rival a great nation. Connecting the political dots, the muscular warrior astutely deduces that this overwhelming strength is exactly why the elf chief struck first. Hero grimly explains that by cutting ties with the responsible parties, the elven leadership can feign ignorance while treating any retaliation as a hostile invasion. Pushing for a logical strategy, the muscular warrior warns that taking in exiles as subordinates could spark a massive political conflict without solid justification. Refusing to back down, Hero insists they must accept the outcasts because leaving them behind would be an absolute waste. The muscular warrior arches an eyebrow in sheer confusion, asking his lord what he actually means by calling them a waste. Staring directly at the disgraced elven champion, Hero firmly points out that Alexia is fundamentally a teacher. The imposing chief completely agrees with the logic, noting that her newly adopted beastkin children will desperately need a proper education. The muscular warrior finally understands, adding that Garius's complete stealth abilities make him the perfect bodyguard for their expanding trade operations. Highly impressed by the tactical foresight, the warrior praises his lord's planning as Hero humbly accepts it as his sworn duty. Turning back to the stunned exiles, Hero kindly offers them the position but clearly states they are completely free to refuse the unreasonable request. Gesturing to the ragged group of rescued beastkin orphans, he passionately explains that her selfless kindness is exactly what these children need. A tiny, trembling kitten slowly steps forward through the tall grass and looks up at her elven savior. Staring down at the innocent child, a heartbroken Alexia is forced to confront the painful memories of her own powerlessness. A young catgirl excitedly asks her big sister if she will be their teacher. The elven woman gently brushes her hair back and softly agrees that she will do it if she is good enough. Tears of joy stream down the elf's face as the little beastkin girl tackles her in a heartwarming embrace. Watching the touching scene unfold, Amelia smiles warmly and remarks to the chief that Lord Hero is truly a good man. She blushes slightly and admits that his kindness is so profound it is almost worrying. The chief maintains a stoic expression, stating she won't pry into what exactly is concerning her. However, the older beastkin leans in and mentions that she has a proposal of her own for Amelia. The chief notes that since Amelia proved her immense strength in the tournament, the path to becoming clan chief will open to her as she grows older. She stares intently at the young archer and asks if she wishes to return to the village. Surprised by the offer, Amelia looks back at Hiro and stammers that she would need to ask him about it. Hiro smiles brightly and encourages her to accept, pointing out that she could truly live with her family again and eventually become a powerful chief. Amelia's eyes widen in absolute shock as she nervously reminds him that she is already his wife. Hiro nervously laughs it off, claiming that their marriage was just for appearances and she shouldn't worry since families are happier together. Furious at his dense response, Amelia violently shoves Hiro aside without a single word. Holding his stinging cheek, a completely bewildered Hiro wonders what he did wrong. Walking away in a huff, Amelia bitterly mutters that he is an absolute idiot. Standing awkwardly in the grass, Hiro calls out to the little dragon girl to ask what just happened. The little dragon girl aggressively scolds him for bullying her mother and furiously demands that he go after her immediately. Jolted into action by her fierce screaming, a panicked Hiro sprints after the furious archer. Watching the chaotic scene, the chief sighs that while she thought he was remarkable, he is still incredibly inexperienced. The muscular warrior agrees, noting that managing a domain makes it easy to forget he is still just a youth. Staring into the distance, Hiro catches up to Amelia and admits that when he first met her, he thought he was unreliable. He reflects on his own nature, explaining how he casually uses elixirs, wields countless divine revelations, and crafts magical glasses. Walking up behind the sulking beastkin, Hiro humbles himself by claiming he isn't special and was simply granted divine knowledge by pure chance. Staring earnestly at her back, he insists that his reliance on luck is the absolute truth. Amelia grits her teeth and sharply retorts that she absolutely hates that specific stubbornness of his. Spinning around with tears in her eyes, she passionately declares that even his frustrating stubbornness is part of why she fell for him. Blushing furiously, the beastkin archer completely confesses that she loves Hiro so much. Hiro is left utterly speechless, his eyes widening in absolute shock at her heartfelt declaration. Overcome with emotion, Amelia aggressively grabs Hiro's collar and pulls him in close. Burying her face into his chest, she softly apologizes for her sudden outburst. Wrapping his arms around her trembling shoulders, Hiro warmly embraces the beastkin and admits he loves her too. Smiling tearfully against his chest, she playfully chides him for still being unreliable and wishes he had confessed first. Holding her tightly, Hiro firmly states that even if he is unreliable, he still wants her to stay by his side. The two young lovers share a passionate, silhouetted kiss amidst the beautiful overgrown ruins of the forest. Pulling away from the embrace, a flustered Amelia marvels at the incredibly beautiful scenery surrounding them. Smiling brightly at the breathtaking landscape, Hiro agrees and wishes they had a beautiful place like this back home. He shares his dream of eventually taking the time to create lush gardens once their developing territory finally settles down. Turning to him in confusion, Amelia asks why he is in such a massive hurry to establish his domain. Hiro's expression instantly darkens as he reveals his suspicions became absolute certainty when Smirnov brought the craftsman. Narrowing his eyes with grim resolve, he notes that there have been dangerous signs for a while now. He drops a massive bombshell, warning that at this rate, the finances of the Roswell territory are going to completely collapse. A grand establishing shot reveals the majestic architecture of the Earl's Manor located in the Rothwell territory. The scene shifts to a neatly arranged dining table featuring simple bowls of soup and fresh bread. Standing nervously by the table, an older chef sweats profusely as his master stares down at the meal and demands to know what it is. With a violent outburst, the master hurls his bowl across the room, sending it shattering against the wall right next to the terrified chef. Cowering under the intense glare, the chef stammers out the daily menu while a grand title introduces the Rothwell family as the proud shield of the royal bloodline. Red with anger, the head of the house furiously berates the servant for daring to serve such lowly commoner food to a noble of his supreme status. Sitting calmly at the table, the young heir Marisun Rothwell gently attempts to soothe his father by noting that simple food is nice once in a while. Maintaining a deceptively gentle smile, Marisun turns to the trembling chef and asks exactly how long he has been serving their noble household. Calculating the 20 years of service, the young heir notes that the chef must earn a substantial salary and live an incredibly comfortable life. Waving his hands in desperate panic, the chef vehemently denies living comfortably and explains that feeding his 3 daughters keeps his household completely broke. Sweating profusely, the desperate servant attempts to save himself by declaring that cooking for the Earl remains his family's absolute greatest honor. With a chillingly cheerful smile and a casual wave of his hand, Mari-san immediately fires the veteran chef on the spot. Crashing heavily to his knees, the devastated servant desperately begs the young master to wait and reconsider the cruel dismissal. Trembling with overwhelming fear, the chef tearfully pleads that he never meant to serve unworthy meals, but high-quality ingredients have become impossibly difficult to find. Staring up in absolute despair, he cries that losing this job will throw his entire family onto the streets and earn him the eternal hatred of his daughters. Frowning slightly in mock sympathy, Mari-san rests his chin on his hand and mutters that leaving them on the streets would indeed be a bit too cruel. The kneeling chef looks up with a tiny glimmer of hope as the young noble suddenly proposes an alternative arrangement. Revealing a deeply sinister grin, Mari-san maliciously offers to hire the chef's daughters to serve as his personal bed attendants. Glancing sideways with a cold, calculating eye, the twisted heir casually asks his father if he has any objections to the disgusting new arrangement. Unfazed by his son's depravity, the stern earl simply scoffs and tells him to do whatever he pleases with the lowly commoners. The furious earl violently barks an order to fetch the girls immediately, threatening to execute the entire family if they dare to run. Sitting back down to his humble meal, Mari-san coldly notes that his father is finally showing his true, ruthless colors now that Hiro has been successfully exiled. Glaring fiercely into the distance, the earl swears he will use his own divine revelation to crush any unseen enemies who are secretly scheming against them. A sharp-dressed maid enters the grand dining room just as Mari-san casually questions his father about how their noble situation became so dire. Standing with perfect posture in her classic uniform, Mars the secretary and maid formally asks how she may assist her demanding masters. Leaning back heavily in his ornate chair, the earl aggressively orders the maid to immediately fetch the current quarter's financial reports. Without missing a single beat, the highly efficient maid slams a heavy financial ledger directly onto the table in front of the startled earl. Scanning the grim documents, the earl leans forward in absolute fury and demands to know why their tax revenue has plummeted to such pathetic levels. He violently questions if the farmers are failing to grow their crops, utterly baffled as to why their mighty territory is only collecting half of its expected taxes. Adjusting her polished glasses, Mars politely apologizes for speaking out of turn before offering a precise explanation for the financial disaster. She calmly informs the furious lord that despite the severe drought initially hurting the harvest, the crops are actually still successfully growing. The earl grunts in annoyed acknowledgement, recalling that a distant mountain eruption brought unexpected rain and saved the fields from total destruction. Mari-san smugly questions if the farmers are just making pathetic excuses to avoid paying, noting his own divine revelation should be accelerating their crop growth. The stoic maid pushes her glasses up and solemnly reveals that despite the young master's divine power, the crops are inexplicably growing much slower than before. Stepping forward with the open ledger, she points out that the minor agricultural dip is far too small to explain the massive overall financial drop. Narrowing his eyes as he carefully reads the true numbers, the earl finally understands exactly what is causing their catastrophic financial losses. Reading over his father's shoulder, Mari-san discovers that several major trading companies are paying almost zero taxes compared to the previous term. The young heir realizes the Ardmic Merchant Guild has been importing massive quantities of extremely rare and valuable monster materials like sea serpent scales. The maid explains the brutal loophole, revealing that since trading taxes are based solely on local income, merchants who only purchase goods without selling them pay absolutely nothing. Realizing their wealth is being legally drained by opportunistic parasites, the furious earl demands to know exactly where these high-tier goods are flowing from. Staring in disbelief, the earl reels from the shocking news and mutters that it simply cannot be true. Maintaining a deceptively composed demeanor, Mari-san asks his father if he has heard the terrifying new rumor. Silhouettes of the group appear as rumors spread about a mysterious refugee village in the Vilewood protected by a dragon-taming savior. The earl furiously waves off the report as a ridiculous fantasy, insisting the land is permanently cursed and soaked in the blood of hunted beastmen. He aggressively orders Mars to fetch Lillian, only to learn that she has already departed to chase after Hiro. Sweating nervously, the maid points out that the witch of the forest should possess some critical knowledge about the unfolding situation. The earl's face twists in sudden confusion as he demands to know what on earth is happening in their northern territory. Adjusting her glasses, the maid casually mentions that the northern barbarians began heavily invading their lands a few days ago. Flying into a violent, uncontrollable rage, the earl grabs the maid and furiously berates her for failing to report the massive barbarian movements immediately. Recognizing the incredibly dire situation, he grimly notes that the delayed response will lead to catastrophic damage since the enemy's military strength rivals the royal army. A mysterious woman ominously declares that the very ground they stand on is the absolute gateway to their impending ruin. Clutching his head in sheer despair, the earl questions how his grand domain fell into a devastating crisis of plunging taxes and barbaric invasions. He reflects on the miraculous birth of his twin sons, recalling how their arrival brought divine blessings that doubled the territory's entire crop yield. Remembering the rite of oracle, he notes that Mari-san was the one to inherit the divine revelation while Hiro was deemed an absolute failure. Looking down on the young boy with absolute disdain, the ruthless lord coldly cast his seemingly useless son into exile. However, he agonizingly realizes that banishing Hiro immediately caused their crop yields to plummet, absolutely destroying their previously booming tax revenue. Gritting his teeth in raw frustration, the Earl begins to suspect that he made a catastrophic mistake by discarding his supposedly talentless son. Staring intensely at the divine artifact, he frantically wonders if all of their past prosperity was secretly the direct result of Hiro's hidden revelation. Standing in the oppressive darkness, he angrily questions if Hiro intentionally accepted his exile as part of a massive, calculated scheme. Dismissing the paranoid thought, the Earl scoffs that people never truly change, remembering Hiro as a natural-born fool who was far too kind for his own good. Biting his thumb in deep thought, the wicked lord reveals he has intimately known Hiro's pathetic nature since their previous lives on Earth. A flashback reveals the two men in business suits, with the Earl confessing he is the exact same corporate boss who maliciously drove Hiro to absolute ruin in their past life. He mercilessly recalls Hiro struggling deeply after the tragic loss of his parents, completely unaware that his trusted boss was the one secretly responsible. The corrupt businessman ruthlessly admits to causing the fatal car crash while driving drunk, easily covering it up since the victims were his own expendable employees. Pushing his insatiable greed even further, the sinister boss maliciously interfered with the grieving family's life insurance payout. Using the stolen blood money, he successfully saved his failing guild and secured an incredibly comfortable life for himself. Clenching his fist, the reincarnated villain coldly declares that taking from others is simply the absolute truth of how the world works. He fully embraces his dark, predatory nature, proudly defining himself as a ruthless opportunist who survives solely by consuming the weak. Boasting about his unmatched talent for desperate scheming, he begins carefully calculating his next sinister move to escape the current political crisis. Stepping forward with a wicked smile, Mari-san smoothly suggests they simply force the dragon-taming savior to work for them as a disposable pawn. A group of furious nobles violently reject the humiliating idea of ever bowing their proud heads to the heavily disowned heir. Flashing a deeply sinister smirk, the Earl silences the tense room and assures them that such a drastic, shameful measure won't be necessary. He coldly reasons that since the vile wood is still technically their property, any dragon or thriving village located there legally belongs to the Rothwell estate. Formulating a highly devious plan, he immediately summons a lowly subordinate named George to execute his dark will. A well-armed, low-ranking noble named George promptly arrives and stands at absolute attention before his demanding masters. Mari-san carefully analyzes the knight, noting that despite his low rank, George possesses top-tier swordsmanship that closely rivals a true sword saint. The young heir orders George to issue a royal decree forcing Hiro and his dragon to the northern frontlines to effortlessly wipe out the barbarian threat. He maliciously plots to steal all the glory, intending to position George as the heroic savior while using Hiro as entirely disposable mercenary fodder. Fearing a massive citizen revolt if the truth ever leaks, Mari-san coldly decides they must label Hiro's settlement as a dangerous den of heretics. Conspiring together in the Grand Hall, they firmly agree to completely fabricate a fake narrative that justifies annihilating the entire refugee village. Radiating absolute, tyrannical authority, the Earl violently declares that his twisted scheme will be swiftly executed by official royal decree. He issues the absolute command to march into the Vilewood, capture the dragon, and forcefully enslave its master for the upcoming bloody war. Kneeling with unwavering, absolute loyalty, George solemnly accepts the brutal royal command without a single moment of hesitation. Looking up at his ruthless master, the knight sharply asks exactly how he should proceed if the village attempts to resist the royal decree. Glaring with cold, unyielding malice, the Earl explicitly states that his only true desire is acquiring the dragon's immense, destructive power. He cruelly authorizes George to murder the original master and burn the entire village to ash if they dare to show even a hint of defiance. As the heavy doors slam securely shut, the Earl whispers a dark, mocking prayer for his newly appointed savior to succeed. The scene cuts to the quiet, oppressive atmosphere of the Rothwell estate office where the sinister lord sits in absolute, brooding silence. He greedily fantasizes about the absolute prosperity he will secure by seizing the dragon's overwhelming power to establish a brand new settlement. Clenching his fist with limitless ambition, the Earl realizes this immense power could even allow him to successfully found his very own sovereign nation. Staring out over his grand estate, he violently reaffirms his tyrannical belief that the common people exist solely to fatten their lords and must live in groveling obedience. Resting his chin heavily on his hands, he reflects on his past life's philosophy about needing a fresh start, suddenly deciding that he was completely wrong. His eyes narrow with terrifying, absolute resolve as he declares that no amount of desperate struggling will ever change one's ultimate fate. With a deeply sinister smirk, the reincarnated villain mutters Ijima Hiroshi's true name and vows to completely crush him once again. Gazing maliciously across the divide at Hiro and his joyful companions, the wicked Earl swears he will relentlessly steal absolutely everything from him in this new world as well. Standing together in the sunlit forest, Hiro and his companions prepare to finally head home. Walking beside him, Amelia apologizes to Hiro for unexpectedly keeping them in her village for an entire month. Hiro smiles and reassures her that the sudden rain delay was actually worth it since they got to study valuable history, geography, and local facilities. The muscular man glances back with concern, questioning if it is truly safe to leave their territory unattended for so long. Unfazed by the worry, Hiro confidently states that he has already made all the necessary arrangements. He explains that Amira headed back early to keep watch alongside the ancient dragon and the rest of their forces. Dropping in from above, the little dragon girl chimes in that GOL also tagged along, assuring them that any incidents will be immediately reported. The muscular man strictly warns them not to let their guard down, noting that the wilderness outside the nest remains extremely dangerous. Crouching in the dirt, a cat girl discovers fresh tracks and warns the group that a very large pack of demon wolves recently passed through. Hiro's eyes widen as a sudden rustle in the nearby bushes confirms the dangerous beasts are still prowling nearby. A sudden blur of motion bursts from the underbrush, prompting a startled Hiro to scream in surprise. Amelia and the muscular man desperately shout his name as the unknown creature violently launches itself at their lord. Instead of a vicious attack, a baffled Hiro finds himself sitting in the grass while a fluffy white dog happily licks his face. The little dragon girl excitedly rushes over and cheers that her papa successfully caught Karo-chan for her. Sitting in the clearing with the energetic pup, a deeply confused Hiro asks who Karo-chan is and where Gol and Amira went. The little girl happily explains that the dragon Sama personally gave the little creature its name. Squinting closely at the happily panting dog, the muscular man suddenly freezes in absolute realization. He shockingly reveals that the adorable pup is actually a Cerberus, a super rare evolved form of the deadly demon wolf. The little dragon girl explains she saved Karo-chan from being bullied, but her grandpa sternly refused to let the creature inside the house. Fearing the pup will be bullied again outside, she begs Hiro for permission to keep him since her grandpa left the final decision to him. Looking over his shoulder, Hiro nervously asks Natasha if keeping a demon wolf is actually safe for their territory. Petting the friendly Cerberus, Natasha assures him that with proper care, the creature will join their pack and become an excellent hunting or guard dog. The little dragon girl leans in with sparkling eyes, eagerly pressing Hiro to let them keep her new friend. Smiling warmly, Hiro gently pets the pup's head and officially welcomes Karo-chan into their growing domain. Sweating nervously at the implications, the muscular warrior mutters that teaming up a divine dragon lord with a Cerberus creates a terrifying force capable of wiping out entire countries. Oblivious to the deadly potential, the little girl happily declares Karo part of the family and promises he will never be bullied again. Suddenly remembering a critical message, she violently panics and screams that there is massive trouble back at home. A wave of dread washes over Hiro as he frantically wonders if a deadly epidemic or a brutal monster invasion struck their lands. He desperately questions how a disaster could have possibly happened when he specifically left the mighty ancient dragon behind to protect everything. Stepping out of the forest, an absolutely stunned Hiro stares ahead and wonders what in the world happened to his home. The group freezes in sheer disbelief as a towering wall of perfectly grown crops completely blocks their path. Beyond the massive fields, the once ruined estate has been flawlessly transformed into a stunning, fully restored mansion. Wading through the massive stalks of grain, the muscular man is utterly baffled by the incredibly well-kept farmland. Staring at the beautiful architecture, they realize the entire mansion has been completely rebuilt to absolute perfection. Relieved of his panic, Hiro laughs and notes that the trouble was actually a wonderful surprise, though the little girl stubbornly insists it is still a huge deal. Approaching the humanoid ancient dragon, Hiro remarks that Karo-chan appears to have been safely accepted into the territory as well. He gently questions why the mighty dragon would ever leave such a small, vulnerable creature outside in the dangerous wilderness. The stoic ancient dragon calmly explains that Gol found the pup only after the magical barrier was already fully established. He details that the ultimate dragon barrier prevents absolutely anything from entering without the master's explicit approval, leaving no room for exceptions. Staring up at the towering guardian, a completely bewildered Hiro asks why he would ever put up such an extreme, impenetrable barrier in the first place. A stern voice demands to know what the dragon means by questioning why. Sweating with indignation, the humanoid dragon furiously questions if a mere 30 pieces of fried chicken is enough to compensate him for patrolling the skies every single day. Sighing in exasperation, he argues that the barrier already keeps all enemies out perfectly fine. Hero glares fiercely, sharply asking how any new settlers are supposed to arrive if an impenetrable barrier blocks the entire domain. A gentle voice suddenly urges Lord Hero to calm down, assuring him that the mighty dragon didn't mean any harm. Hero turns in surprise to find the elegantly dressed Jack standing nearby in the clearing. Jack smoothly admits that if the group had returned any later, he would have blown all the territory's leftover funds on booze. Hero's eyes widen with sudden confusion as he demands to know exactly what Jack means by leftover funds. Jack smiles brightly and reveals that barely 2 weeks after delivering farming tools, the villagers had already harvested a massive crop of wheat and soybeans. Throwing his arms wide toward the towering crops, Jack proudly announces that the fields are already overflowing with a brand new batch of produce. He casually explains that since the storage quickly filled up, he sold the overflow in town and added the massive profits directly to Hero's personal assets. Staring in sheer disbelief, Amelia realizes they achieved 2 full harvests in a single month. Hero silently calculates the overwhelming agricultural boosts, deducing that this miraculous growth is the direct result of his combined divine revelations. While recognizing this instantly solves their food shortage, Hero grimly worries that rapidly accelerating the harvest cycle might spark severe unforeseen issues. Seeking ground-level information, Hero politely stops a passing villager to ask a few pressing questions. A humble village woman bows respectfully before her lord, nervously wondering if her simple perspective could be of any actual use. Getting straight to the point, Hero gently asks if there is absolutely anything causing trouble in her daily life. The exhausted woman explains that the lightning-fast crop growth demands endless labor, forcing them to constantly clear new land just to prevent total soil depletion. Analyzing the brutal workload, Hero notes that this supernatural growth is far more intense than anything seen in the Rothwell farmlands. A simmering frustration hangs in the air as the women bitterly mention exactly what the men have been up to. They complain that after quickly building the sheds, the lazy men have done nothing but host daily drinking parties with the mighty dragon. Sent to help with carpentry, the men completely abandon their duties, leaving the furious women to violently clear the harsh farmland entirely by themselves. Glaring daggers at the sweating ancient dragon, Hero coldly acknowledges exactly how his supposedly mighty guardian has been spending its time. Realizing the urgent need for a massive organizational shift, Hero firmly declares that they must address the entire village immediately. He decisively commands the women to gather absolutely everyone and bring them straight to the grand mansion. Turning to his companions, Hero efficiently orders Amira and the rest of the beastkin to assist in the massive village-wide summons. Waving eagerly, Amira enthusiastically accepts the order and sprints off to wrangle the scattered citizens. Pivoting to logistics, Hero urgently asks his sharp-dressed merchant exactly how much wealth he holds in his personal assets. Flipping through his detailed ledger, Jack formally reports that the young lord has successfully amassed 300 gold coins in pure savings. Hero screams in sheer, unadulterated shock at the absurdly massive sum of wealth sitting in his name. Jack smoothly explains that this massive fortune comes from selling the dragon's ultra-rare materials alongside the booming agricultural overflow. Calculating the staggering economy, Hero realizes an average household only earns roughly 250 silver coins a year. Gripping his chin in deep thought, Hero deduces that his current personal fortune could single-handedly run the entire territory for over a decade. Formulating a brilliant strategy, he decides to hire the rescued beastkin orphans to solve the brutal labor shortage while easily covering their expenses. The catgirls stare at him in utter disbelief, shocked that their young lord intends to completely bankroll the entire population's livelihood. Flashing a determined gaze, Hero firmly corrects them by stating he isn't simply handing out blind charity. He humbly points out that the hard-working citizens are actually the ones providing him with his immense wealth. Passionately explaining his core philosophy, Hero declares that a noble living in excessive luxury fundamentally forces the working class to suffer. With unshakable resolve, he proudly vows to bear the heavy social responsibility of his noble status by fiercely supporting his people. Staring deadpan at their absurdly altruistic lord, the entire group violently interjects in perfect unison that his mindset is absolutely not normal. Natasha steps forward to challenge him, firmly warning that treating the proud villagers like helpless beggars by shouldering everything is fundamentally wrong. Despite her confusion, the fierce beastkin desperately asks Hero to clearly explain his ultimate endgame for the territory. Shaking his head, Hero reveals his breathtaking ambition to forge an absolute utopia entirely free from the agonizing grip of starvation. He dreams aloud of a barrier-free society where every single person actively supports and protects one another. Staring into the sky with unwavering conviction, he swears that this beautiful dream can genuinely become reality. Narrowing his eyes, he bitterly acknowledges that the current world is built upon endlessly cruel and inefficient systems. He violently condemns the standard feudal system, disgusted by the parasitic nobles who lazily exploit the desperate masses for heavy taxes. Tapping into his past life corporate brilliance, he confidently guarantees he can engineer a highly profitable system that creates an unstoppable, high-welfare society. His grand strategy is revealed as building a perfect, happy town that completely forces neighboring nations to eventually mimic their unmatched prosperity. He softly describes this infectious, expanding utopia as a limitless circle of happiness. The group is left absolutely breathless, struggling to comprehend a vision vast enough to fundamentally shatter how the world operates. Grinning fiercely, Hero notes he has spent his entire life being saved and boldly demands they watch him finally take the lead. Clenching his fist, the young lord proudly declares that his true reign officially begins right now. Flipping open a heavy tome of administrative plans, he prepares to unleash his very first revolutionary decree upon the citizens. With an intense, commanding stare, Hero officially initiates his grand master plan by mobilizing the entire territory for massive public works projects. A grand establishing shot reveals the majestic architecture of the Vilewood Lord's estate. A crowd of confused villagers gathers as they are thanked for responding to the sudden summons. Standing at the top of the grand staircase, Hero sincerely thanks the villagers for repairing the estate and houses while he was away. Looking down at the crowd, he explains that after being briefed on the current situation, he has decided they need to act quickly. Staring with absolute determination, Hero asks everyone gathered to lend him their strength for an upcoming task. Gesturing confidently, he officially commands the citizens to take on some massive public works projects. The villagers stare back in utter bewilderment, completely unfamiliar with the strange term. Whispers of confusion ripple through the crowd as they wonder what the young lord is actually talking about. The muscular warrior sighs and reminds Hero that he had previously warned him about using foreign noble concepts with commoners. Acknowledging the confusion, Hero decides to give a quick explanation and compares public works to the construction of bridges or castle gates. He passionately announces that he will personally fund the entire endeavor and wants everyone to help build and develop the area. A villager hesitantly asks what exactly they are supposed to be building with these new funds. Pausing for dramatic effect, Hero prepares to reveal the grand objective of their massive construction project. Flashing a brilliant smile, the young lord cheerfully declares that they will be building their very own homes. He graciously adds that they can choose absolutely any location within the territory to build their new houses. The muscular warrior steps forward in shock, warning his boss that simply giving away houses is way too generous. A confused Hero turns to his warrior, innocently asking why building their own homes is considered too much. Glaring at his dense lord, the warrior sharply tells him not to pretend he doesn't understand how the world truly works. He angrily explains that corrupt nobles constantly force citizens to build infrastructure just to extort them with tolls and new taxes. Gritting his teeth, the warrior warns that even with a soft-hearted lord, forcing citizens to build houses just to tax them for living in them is way too forceful. The terrified villagers frantically agree, begging the lord not to do this since they have absolutely no money and would be forced to hang themselves. Understanding their deep fear of exploitation, Hero gently reassures the panicked crowd that he isn't forcing them to build things solely for his own benefit. He firmly promises that he will pay them fair wages for their labor and absolutely won't charge them any taxes for the homes they build. Utterly baffled by the unprecedented generosity, the muscular warrior screams in confusion at the insane idea of free housing and paid labor. Unfazed by the outburst, Hero casually clarifies that the wages of 20 silver coins will only be paid during the active construction period. Staring at him in sheer disbelief, the warrior demands to know exactly what kind of crazy scheme his boss is trying to pull. Holding up 3 fingers, Hero confidently explains that his public works have 3 main goals: industrial development, quality of life improvement, and territorial maintenance. He elaborates that since their land is still completely self-sufficient and undeveloped, they must aggressively invest to build a strong foundation for industry. Refusing to let it go, the pragmatic warrior argues that a domain absolutely cannot survive without tax revenue and demands to know how building free houses earns money. Meeting his gaze with unwavering confidence, Hero declares that improving the citizens' quality of life is the absolute key to generating immense wealth. He explains the core economic principle that when living standards rise, the overall productivity of the people naturally increases as well. Visualizing a bustling trade route, Hero notes that the increased crop yields will be widely distributed across the world through their trading companies. Smiling brightly, he concludes that the massive profits from these trading companies will become their new tax revenue, allowing them to fund even more projects. Pushing up his glasses in absolute awe, Jack admits he just learned a brilliant new method for generating economic activity from a completely barren wasteland. Hero firmly states that while this initial resource distribution stabilizes their economy, it is still only the foundational step. Jack notes that once the foundation is set, their next major hurdle will inevitably be a severe manpower shortage to keep up with the rapid expansion. A small, booted foot steps confidently onto the wooden floorboards as Hero assures Jack that they already have the labor issue completely covered. Gesturing proudly to the rescued beastkin orphans standing behind him, Hero announces that these children will be the ones handling the labor. The muscular warrior stares in disgust, bluntly asking if Hero actually went to the beastkin village just to purchase child slaves. Narrowing his eyes with fierce resolve, Hero immediately shuts down the dark accusation and firmly declares that is absolutely not the case. Gesturing to the ragged children, the cat girls point out that the poor orphans have no parents or homes to return to. Hero explains that thanks to Amelia winning the martial arts tournament, they have successfully borrowed the children to serve as the territory's new labor force in exchange for providing them with proper education and care. Looking down at the crowd, he announces that the orphans will stay at the estate temporarily until he commissions the construction of dedicated dormitories and a school. Crossing his arms skeptically, a villager warns the young lord that things might not work out smoothly since there are currently no children living in their settlement. Gently patting the orphans' heads, the villagers warmly welcome the beastkin children by asking them to call them mom and dad. Feathers float gently through the air as the previously divided humans and beastkin smile together as one big, happy family. Clutching her hands to her chest, a deeply moved Amelia realizes that this beautiful scene is the true circle of happiness Hero envisioned. Smiling brightly at the heartwarming sight, Hero remarks that their successful integration definitely counts as a good deed. Addressing the gathered crowd once again, Hero announces that it is finally time to unveil his divine revelation. Holding up his magical tome, he explains that the gods bestow random divine scriptures whenever a truly good deed is performed. Channeling his magical energy, the young lord proudly activates the lottery of divine scriptures to see exactly what blessing they have earned. A towering, ethereal manifestation of Dionysus appears over Hero as he successfully draws a rare-grade scripture from the god of intoxication. Hero's eyes widen in sheer surprise as a small, tied pouch magically materializes directly upon the open pages of his tome. Peeking carefully inside the mysterious pouch, he wonders aloud if the gods have just gifted them a new type of crop seed. The curious villagers lean in close to examine the strange blessing, wondering exactly what kind of mysterious seeds they are. Reading the divine text, Hero discovers that the seeds belong to an ominous plant named the Breath of Bounty and Frenzy. Sweating nervously at the dangerous-sounding name, the terrified villagers suggest tossing the potentially poisonous seed straight into the fireplace to avoid a disaster. Panicking at the thought of destroying the divine gift, the villagers frantically scream for their lord to stop and wait. Amelia and Hero reel in absolute shock as they realize the pouch contains a top-tier, premium breed of extinct grapes. A villager eagerly explains that while normal grapes take a decade to mature, this legendary variety can be successfully harvested in just 3 short years. The excited villager recounts an ancient myth claiming the grapes were so divinely delicious that the gods completely stole them from the mortal world. Gripping his chin in deep thought, Hero deduces that these incredibly rare grapes could easily become a highly lucrative specialty product for their developing domain. However, he grimly realizes that suddenly flooding the market with an extinct fruit will inevitably draw highly dangerous suspicion toward their territory. Adjusting his monocle with a devious smirk, Jack smoothly points out that the mysterious reputation of the vile wood provides the perfect cover story. Wanting to secure a stable income that doesn't rely entirely on selling dragon scraps, Hero enthusiastically agrees that brewing divine wine is a brilliant strategy. Clenching his fist with newfound determination, the young lord proudly declares that it is finally their time to shine. Stepping forward with confident smiles, the beastkin women volunteer to take charge of the project since brewing alcohol is traditionally a woman's sacred duty. Sweating nervously, the muscular warrior warns them of a terrifying superstition where the gods will completely rot the entire batch if it isn't brewed by pure maidens. Acknowledging that the seeds are literally a divine gift, the group logically decides it would be incredibly foolish to ignore the sacred brewing traditions. Discussing the logistics, the beastkin nervously agree that they must strictly adhere to the ancient legends to prevent angering the heavens. The villagers realize that successfully managing the legendary vineyard will require an immense amount of extra labor on top of their regular farming duties. They heavily note that meticulously tending to the sacred vines and brewing the wine will stretch their already thin workforce to its absolute limit. Wiping sweat from their brows, the tired workers groan that despite their recent recruitment efforts, they are still desperately short on reliable manpower. Narrowing his eyes, Hero firmly stops the panic by stating they must think the situation through without recklessly rushing into any major personnel decisions. He astutely calculates that openly recruiting strangers without proper safeguards could accidentally invite dangerous criminals directly into their vulnerable domain. A villager warns that outsourcing the labor to foreign artisans is incredibly risky since they could easily leak the secret of the extinct grapes to rival merchants. Desperate to protect their highly lucrative secret, Hero seriously considers shouldering the entire grueling workload of farming and brewing entirely by himself. Drawing on his brutal past life, the young lord remembers how he forcefully survived by single-handedly managing his career, household chores, and his little sister. Driven by his old, self-sacrificing habits, he grimly concludes that if he just pushes his body to the absolute breaking point, he can handle all the territory's problems. Hiro flinches in sheer terror as a furious Amelia violently shuts down his reckless plan, strictly forbidding him from trying to run the entire territory alone. Standing tall as a united front, his loyal companions and the villagers firmly demand that their young lord finally start relying on them for help. Amelia sighs in exasperation, easily reading his self-destructive thoughts while a sweating Hiro awkwardly admits that she saw right through his stubbornness. Smiling warmly at his dependable friends, Hiro confesses he was just worried but hopes they can eventually find trustworthy townsfolk to help them grow. Looking out over the beautiful estate, Amelia confidently assures him that his visionary circle of happiness is already successfully drawing wonderful people to their side. A grand shot of the restored mansion emphasizes their peaceful victory as Amelia warmly notes that true happiness will inevitably attract even more happiness. The peaceful atmosphere is violently shattered as a heavy sword violently ricochets off an unseen magical force field deep within the overgrown forest. A squad of heavily armed, cloaked invaders curses in raw frustration as they realize an impenetrable barrier is completely blocking their covert advance. Bursting through the foliage, George suddenly finds himself face to face with two innocent beastkin girls and their fiercely growling Cerberus pup. Narrowing her eyes in sharp suspicion, Amira realizes the stranded men must be dangerous enemies since the mighty dragon's barrier completely rejected them. Sweating profusely under the beastkin's intense glare, the panicked knight nervously stammers that they have it all completely wrong while internally reeling at the confirmation of a dragon. Instantly shifting into a deceptive facade, George drops his weapon and tragically claims his desperate squad is just trying to escape the cruel Rothwell territory. Flashing a deeply sinister, calculated smile, the deceptive knight begs the innocent children to let the legendary savior know that poor, helpless refugees are waiting for salvation. Bursting through the grand double doors, a frantic little maid sprints into the mansion with her dog, screaming that she needs to tell Papa right away. She desperately calls for him to come quickly, warning the confused crowd gathered at the staircase that something terrible has happened. Staring at the panicked child, a bewildered Hiro steps forward and asks Gol exactly what has gone wrong. Clenching her tiny fists, the frantic girl screams that a massive group of smelly people has suddenly appeared. Outside the barrier, a group of ragged, cloaked men humbly apologize for the sudden visit, claiming they fled their home seeking the rumored savior's salvation. Their leader smoothly explains that they asked the young girl to deliver their desperate message since the invisible wall has completely blocked their advance. The muscular warrior notes that an old man reported a gathering of peasants, prompting Hiro to admit he expected something entirely different from the girl's description. Narrowing his eyes at the strangers, the muscular warrior suspiciously points out that their finely made canopy is far too luxurious for mere refugees. Ignoring the suspicion, the deceptive leader dramatically bows his head and begs the savior to take them in. The tense atmosphere shatters as the cloaked leader suddenly recognizes the towering, headband-wearing warrior as the legendary sword Saint Smirnov. Smirnov coldly dismisses the grand title, gesturing toward the young lord and instructing the strangers to take their desperate requests directly to him. Stepping out from behind the towering warrior, a nervous Hiro awkwardly introduces himself as the actual lord of the territory. The deceptive knight stares in absolute shock, instantly recognizing the young boy as the exiled noble and confirming this is indeed the rumored dragon village. Calculating the unexpected threat, the knight grimly recalls rumors of the sword saint abandoning his noble title and marvels that the legendary warrior ended up in such a desolate place. His calculating gaze scans the diverse defensive line, noting the heavily armed beastkin and lizard men standing firmly beside their human lord. Realizing the village's military strength far exceeds his expectations despite the dragon's absence, the knight secretly decides he must find a way to quietly infiltrate their ranks. Completely unaware of the knight's dark intentions, a trusting Hiro gently agrees to hear their plight and invites the stranded men inside. The muscular warrior violently throws his arm out to stop his lord, furiously demanding to know the point of an impenetrable barrier if he just casually invites strangers inside. He harshly warns that these seemingly decent men could secretly be wanted criminals or ruthless bandits plotting to destroy them from within. Refusing to be swayed by paranoia, Hiro stubbornly counters that the exact same logic applies to Smirnov and the rest of their current allies. Struck by the flawless logic, the towering warrior stammers in frustration while desperately questioning if they can truly trust these armed strangers. Staring earnestly at his concerned friend, Hiro passionately declares that he absolutely refuses to turn away desperate people who risk their lives seeking refuge. Sighing in heavy defeat, the muscular warrior bitterly warns his naive lord that this boundless kindness will inevitably get him severely hurt one day. The peaceful conversation is violently shattered as the cloaked leader maliciously thanks them for their help while his men suddenly ambush the young girls from behind. Dropping their pathetic refugee act entirely, the armed invaders ruthlessly take Amelia and Natasha hostage while their leader mockingly thanks the useless lord for making it so easy. Gripping his blade tightly, the treacherous knight orders the stunned defenders to freeze, threatening to instantly slaughter the hostages if anyone dares to resist. Standing firm against the overwhelming hostility, Hero glares at the invaders and demands to know what they could possibly want from a desolate wasteland. The arrogant knight aggressively rejects being compared to common thieves, proudly declaring that they are officially operating under the grand banner of national interest. Unfurling a heavy scroll adorned with a royal crest, the knight officially delivers an absolute imperial decree forcing the entire village to immediately march to the bloody frontlines. Hero's eyes widen in absolute horror as he instantly recognizes the oppressive seal belonging to his ruthless father. Glaring down at the terrified boy, the treacherous knight coldly remarks that he should fully understand the devastating weight of this absolute command. Clenching his fists in defiance, Hero fiercely declares that he doesn't care what dark schemes his twisted father is plotting. Radiating an aura of unyielding resolve, the young lord proudly refuses the royal decree, swearing that his absolute duty is to protect this sanctuary rather than wage meaningless war. Tightening their lethal grip on the struggling Amelia, the treacherous knight promises to brutally torture the helpless hostages until the young lord completely submits. Looming over the helpless captives, the arrogant knight coldly advises the young lord against trying anything heroic and demands his absolute obedience to the crown. Flashing a deeply sinister smile, he falsely claims to desire peace while darkly threatening that any sudden resistance will only result in absolute slaughter. Disgusted by the human's sheer arrogance, a furious Amelia violently grips her captor's arm as he sadistically decides to beat some obedience into her. Angered by her fierce defiance, the brutal captor sneers and violently throws a devastating punch directly toward the helpless archer's face. Before the cowardly strike can connect, Amelia flawlessly executes a devastating upward kick that violently launches her attacker into the air. Landing gracefully from her brutal counterattack, a furious Amelia fiercely condemns the treacherous invaders for daring to weaponize her beloved lord's pure kindness. Amelia violently punches the cloaked man in the face, screaming that he has finally gone too far. As the man stumbles backward from the heavy blow, she immediately follows up with a sweeping low kick to take him down. Pinning him to the ground in a brutal armlock, she furiously demands he know his place while he snarls that she won't get out of this unscathed. Desperately rushing into the clearing, Hero shouts for Amelia to stop, pleading that violence won't solve anything and this has gone too far. Startled by Hero's sudden intervention, Amelia momentarily looks away to apologize while her pinned captive warns her never to take her eyes off an enemy. Seizing the brief opening, the cloaked man violently kicks Amelia away, sending her tumbling helplessly across the grass. A furious little maid steps forward to scold the attacker, screaming that he is a cruel brat for doing something so mean. Angered by the child's defiance, the man throws a ruthless punch directly at her while a comrade shouts for her to watch out. A mystical revelation card materializes, revealing the maid is actually an incarnation of a giant god possessing immense physical resistance and superhuman abilities. The cloaked man recoils in absolute shock as his devastating iron fist harmlessly bounces right off the unbothered child's body. Dodging a sudden barrage of high-speed arrows, the treacherous leader draws his sword and prepares for a much larger battle. Acknowledging the lethal threat, the leader orders his men to stay calm, warning them that landing shots from such a distance proves they are facing a master archer. Crouching high up in a distant tree, the beastkin archer Garius grumbles in sheer frustration that the enemy leader actually managed to notice his stealth position. Recovering from the chaotic ambush, the enemy leader loudly commands his fighters to form a battle line while ordering the porters to watch the mansion. The armed invaders regroup into a tight, defensive formation as they prepare to face off against the furious defenders. Desperately seeking a peaceful resolution, Hero pleads with the invaders and insists that there is absolutely no meaning in shedding blood over this. The enemy leader coldly rejects the peaceful plea, challenging Hero to either obey the royal decree or foolishly die right here in the dirt. Stepping forward to restrain a furious lizard man, the elven champion Alexia disgustedly notes that humans are savages who cannot even stop fighting their own kind. One of the invaders suddenly turns on his leader, angrily complaining that they only found a pathetic gecko instead of the promised, highly valuable dragon parts. Processing the bitter complaint, Alexia deduces that the enemy's true goal was always to steal the overwhelming power of the dragon race for themselves. The tiny lizard man suddenly speaks up with absolute authority, formally introducing himself as Goel's tutor and the silver-winged guardian entrusted to protect this land. He proudly declares his true identity, revealing that he is an ancient dragon serving as the golden hope for all dragonkin. The invaders panic in absolute terror as the tiny creature rapidly transforms, realizing they are now face to face with the legendary silver dragon. Looming over the terrified squad, the dragon prepares to unleash its wrath, declaring they must atone for their insolence and will have no right to complain when their souls are erased. With a devastating roar, the ancient dragon unleashes a massive, billowing wave of toxic poison breath directly at the helpless soldiers. The cloaked men violently cough and gag as the overwhelming toxic fumes immediately invade their lungs and crush their senses. Watching the invaders instantly collapse, the mighty dragon scoffs at their pitiful endurance, mocking them for fainting from such a minor attack. A sweating hero realizes the dragon was the smelly person the little maid warned them about, while she fiercely pinches her nose to block the awful stench. Dismissing the unconscious invaders as mere pests, the dragon strictly commands the defenders to throw them out and permanently banish them from the territory. Staring down at the defeated men, Hero solemnly agrees that they absolutely cannot allow these treacherous soldiers to settle in their peaceful sanctuary. He looks down at the dropped scroll with a heavy heart, burdened by the grim reality that his own father sent an imperial decree to destroy him. The harsh decree explicitly orders the exiled hero and all his military forces to immediately march to the northern frontlines to serve the Rothwell territory. Hero grimly calculates the devastating consequences, realizing that obeying this order will completely engulf the entire domain in a catastrophic war within 6 months. He briefly considers returning to his father's side to fix the crisis but quickly dismisses the idea since completing their new settlement in time is completely impossible. Acknowledging that simply sitting around and brooding won't solve their massive problems, he prepares to forge a difficult new path. Smirnov steps up and bluntly remarks that they have all finally learned their supposedly kind lord doesn't actually have a big heart. Startled by the sudden harsh words, Hero glares at the towering warrior and asks if that was supposed to be a direct insult. Smirnov fiercely confirms the accusation, stating without hesitation that he is absolutely insulting him to his face. Softening his intense gaze, the muscular warrior admits he doesn't actually hate the way Hero thinks and operates. However, he firmly reminds Hero that countless people in their developing territory would be in massive trouble if their idiotic lord ended up getting himself killed. He warmly declares that he will protect his foolish lord no matter what it takes, playfully noting that idiots never change unless they die. Placing a heavy hand on his lord's shoulder, the Sword Saint demands that Hero focus entirely on protecting their beautiful land by any means necessary. Acknowledging his own lack of administrative skills, Smirnov humbly promises to act as Hero's absolute sword if he just gives the word. Surrounded by his fiercely loyal companions, a deeply moved Hero realizes his friends are completely counting on him to lead them safely into the future. Inside the Great Forest Lord's manor, an exhausted Hero sighs heavily as he sits alone at his massive desk. Staring at the endless stacks of paperwork, he realizes tonight will be yet another completely sleepless night. He marvels at his father's past ability to manage such a staggering workload while still finding time to enjoy himself. Stretching his aching arms as someone knocks on the door, Hero vows to keep pushing forward because Smirnov is counting on him. A gentle voice calls out from the hallway, asking if he has a moment to spare. Seeing Amelia walk into the room, Hero smiles and admits it is the perfect time for a quick break. Amelia crouches beside a wooden barrel and asks Hero why their recent guild shipment had sugar packed tightly with seashells. Standing up from his desk, Hero calmly clarifies that he was the one who specifically ordered those seashells. Tilting her head in confusion, the Beastkin girl wonders why he would ever request something so unusual. Hero explains he plans to make reusable writing tools for their classes to prevent constantly wasting valuable paper and parchment. As Amelia wonders what kind of crops grow from scattering seashells, Hero promises to explain the details later. Squinting in confusion, Hero suddenly realizes they never actually placed an order for any sugar. Amelia reveals a delicate box, happily explaining she secretly requested the sugar so she could bake something special. Hero's eyes light up at the sight of the baked sweets, praising Amelia for her incredible talent at making treats. Blushing modestly, she admits she is still learning and reveals all the truly beautiful ones were baked by her teacher. She humbly adds that her own creations are nowhere near as good as her master's flawless baking. Holding up 2 distinct pastries, Amelia points out which one was baked by Mr. Smirnov and which one she made herself. Startled to learn the towering Sword Saint is her pastry teacher, Hero prepares to taste her slightly misshapen treat. Taking a large bite, Hero smiles brightly and assures her that it tastes absolutely incredible regardless of how it looks. Sighing affectionately, Amelia leans in to gently wipe a crumb from the corner of his mouth. She scolds him for pulling another all-nighter, noting that the dark bags under his eyes are making him look like an undead. Handing him another pastry, she gently urges him to take it easy and notes that sweet things are great for recovering from fatigue. Leaning against her on the sofa, Hero softly thanks her and admits that just being with her puts his mind completely at ease. The peaceful moment is violently shattered as a frantic Smirnov bursts through the door shouting for his boss. Catching the two in an intimate position, the muscular warrior violently halts and loudly apologizes for the terrible timing. Flustered beyond belief, a blushing Hero violently waves his hands and desperately insists that nothing was happening. Shoving more sweets into their mouths to hide their embarrassment, the pair loudly praises Smirnov's amazing baking skills. Recovering from the awkward encounter, Hero quickly shifts the topic and asks his warrior what happened. Smirnov scratches his head and asks Hero to meet with the farmers, admitting he doesn't understand their sudden complaints about the fields. Amelia panics at the thought of a crop failure, but Hero calmly notes that the actual harvest yields haven't dropped at all. Stretching his legs, Hero decides it is the perfect excuse to get some fresh air since they haven't inspected the fields lately. Stepping out into the beautiful sunshine, Hero and his companions are greeted by a peaceful sky filled with soaring white birds. Looking over the bustling settlement, Hero notes their population has grown significantly after taking in 20 refugees from the Northern War. He watches the new villagers happily adjusting to their lives, truly grateful that they sought refuge in his domain. Observing the busy workers, he remarks that the northern village is absolutely thriving with constant forestry and land development. They admire a sturdy new building, realizing that the thin timber has successfully covered a massive portion of their local material needs. Hero confidently calculates that their rising crop yields and consecutive months of surplus will definitely attract even more settlers. However, his expression suddenly darkens as he grimly acknowledges that things won't continue to go this smoothly. He explains that accepting more war refugees increases their local tax revenue, which inversely drains his father's wealth. Narrowing his eyes with grim realization, Hero warns that once his ruthless father notices the financial drain, he will inevitably try to seize their thriving domain by force. Smirnov aggressively yanks Hero backward by his collar, prompting the young lord to scream in shock. The muscular warrior scolds his boss, demanding to know if he was actually planning to sleepwalk straight into the manure pit. Checking on the dazed lord, Smirnov asks if he is completely out of it from sheer exhaustion. Hero awkwardly apologizes for his clumsiness, admitting he was just deeply lost in thought regarding the farmlands. A nearby farmer watches in mild amusement as his young lord gathers his scattered wits. Regaining his composure, Hero turns to the farmer and questions why they are already harvesting crops when they were told it would take 3 years. The farmer explains that the vines bloomed just 2 weeks ago, but the trees have been growing at an absolutely terrifying rate. He reveals they just thinned the weaker grapes yesterday, yet by this morning, the remaining fruits were already fully ripe. Hero grips his chin in deep thought, wondering if this hyper-accelerated growth is secretly the result of his divine revelations. He calculates that even his strongest blessing only provides a 7-fold boost, meaning a full grape harvest should still take at least half a year. Noting that corn, soybeans, and wheat are also growing at completely inexplicable speeds, he realizes something far more powerful is at play. Opening his magical tome, Hero decides to double-check his active spells to see if they overlooked a hidden effect. Sitting in the dirt with Smirnov and Amelia, he carefully reviews the specific divine revelation governing domestic policy. Amelia leans over his shoulder and points to a specific entry, asking if it might be the cause. Hero's eyes widen as he discovers a hidden stacking effect that completely doubles all territory management abilities. He realizes this astonishing stacked multiplier perfectly explains how a 3-year agricultural cycle was flawlessly completed in just 2 months. Suddenly catching a familiar scent, the farmer leads the group to examine a barrel of the grapes they discarded just yesterday. Hero reels in absolute shock as he discovers the discarded fruit has already magically fermented into high-quality wine. The farmer is utterly bewildered, explaining that natural fermentation usually takes at least a full week to even begin. Marveling at the impossibly fast process, Hero realizes his divine revelation has unlocked an incredibly lucrative production cycle. Turning to Amelia with a gentle smile, Hero firmly declares that this miraculous prosperity isn't solely due to his magic. He passionately insists that this massive achievement was built entirely on the relentless hard work of every single person in the domain. He praises the farmers for never cutting corners and maintaining the high-yield crops despite the grueling pace. Furthermore, he credits the ancient dragons for hunting tirelessly so the workers can focus on building without going hungry. Looking warmly at his companions, he thanks Amelia for keeping their community connected and ensuring the orphans can study in peace. He acknowledges Smirnov's daily vigilance, noting that the warriors' protection is the absolute foundation of their peaceful sanctuary. Reflecting on their collective exhaustion, Hero admits that his own habit of overworking only adds more pressure on everyone else. Recognizing his limits, he decides it is finally time to stop pushing his exhausted people to the breaking point. Clenching his fist with unshakable resolve, the young lord officially declares a change in policy. Throwing his arms wide, Hero enthusiastically announces a massive 2-day holiday so everyone can finally celebrate the harvest together. Smirnov cheers loudly at the brilliant idea, declaring they will feast tonight with their newly fermented wine. The joyful celebration is violently interrupted as Hero suddenly screams for everyone to hold on. A massive explosion of earth and debris violently erupts right in front of them, sending Amelia and Smirnov reeling backward. Shielding his face from the blinding dust, Smirnov violently curses as something colossal crashes down from the sky. Squinting through the settling debris, Hiro goes pale as he recognizes a legendary beast from his picture books. The dust completely clears to reveal the towering, horrifying form of a mythical Catablipas. Smirnov frantically orders everyone to take cover, screaming that the disaster-class monster's eyes bring absolute, instant death. A cheerful little maid suddenly pops out from behind the beast, excitedly cheering that Lord Gol already smashed the monster's evil eyes. Ignoring the dead beast, a deeply stressed hero approaches the stoic ancient dragon for a very serious conversation. He strictly scolds the mighty guardian, arguing it is incredibly dangerous to let Gol hunt a creature capable of instant death. Assuming the dragon doesn't understand, Hiro prepares to thoroughly explain exactly how the monster's lethal gaze operates. He emphatically states that the beast's evil eye instantly kills any human caught within its direct line of sight. The arrogant dragon sneers and mocks his lord as a fool, explaining the undead curse only affects frail humans and is completely harmless to dragons. He proudly adds that the Catablipas is an extremely rare beast, making its meat a highly sought-after delicacy they only taste every few decades. Looking away suspiciously, the dragon casually mentions he hunted the creature in a familiar nearby territory. Sweating profusely, Hiro nervously asks if the dragon just provoked a highly dangerous neighbor. The dragon confidently dismisses the concern, assuring Hiro that the desolate land holds neither conflict nor meat to worry about. Far away, a dark, jagged castle stands ominously amidst a barren wasteland of graves and shattered stone. Inside the ruined throne room, a cloaked subordinate kneels in absolute terror before his furious master. The Dark Lord sits upon his throne, seething with rage that his legendary gatekeeper was so casually slaughtered. He wonders exactly who could possess the power to breach his defenses while the Northern Demon King is busy preparing for war. Staring down into the massive crater left by the abducted beast, he quickly deduces exactly what happened. Tracing the trail of blood directly to the enchanted forest, the sinister entity realizes the dragons are using his domain as a hunting ground. Glaring with unyielding, absolute malice, the Dark Lord vows to make the arrogant lizards suffer for their disrespect. He ominously declares that his unstoppable army of the dead will mercilessly peel the flesh from their living bones.